recording.
On the pie cat. How my people contact your people? She said 20 something.
Well, that's it. I think that's some of the others. Some certifications.
All right. Hi, Sandy.
Oh, there
Oh,
she
she
is.
You're on mute, ma'am. Hi. Hi. Oh, look at that, guys. Audio is working. Woo! We are covered.
Who's Ryan,
Angie,
right?
you're going to want to come around this way because of our technology setup. All right. Well, Sandy, we'll cue you in when it is time. Thanks.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and get started this evening. Good evening. Welcome to the APA board meeting this evening on April 8th, 2025. Hope everyone's doing well. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. First thing on the agenda here, if we can get a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first thing on the agenda here, I'd like to get a motion to approve the agenda as presented here.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? Go ahead, go ahead. Yes, I'd like to go ahead and amend it and add one thing additional down to, I guess it'll be the new number 8 will be for executive session afterwards. Or excuse me, number 11. It'll be number 11. Yes,
And this will be a personnel discussion.
and personnel. All right, any other further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next thing on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anyone signed up for public comments this evening?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Next thing on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes. This is in your packet online and on your packet currently for the March 11, 2025 meeting. Should have them in there, so we take a minute to go over it.
If everybody's name's spelled correctly, that's always good.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as presented this evening?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the CEO report as presented here April 8th, 2025. We'll take a few minutes to review it and then we move forward from there. Yeah, can I get a motion to approve the CEO report as presented this evening?
I'll make a motion that we approve the CEO report as presented to us.
All right, I have a motion, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, on page 4, the paragraph on the charter facility grant, I think maybe a little extra insight is needed on that. When we shortly look at our numbers, building improvements and the facilities grant, which of course that was that troublesome 520,000 last year spent this year. I think aren't those are all froze, right? Because there hasn't, or
So we had paused our projects, right, while we were
Okay.
assessing what the federal government, what we can anticipate the federal government is doing today or within this hour. No commentary on that at all, no opinions there. So this one is not a federal grant, this is a state grant. And you're right that it is at $519,020. That has been a pain in our bookkeeping lives for about a year now, as our amazing auditor will also tell us. And so now it truly has to be expensed by the end of this fiscal year.
right? Or what happened, in other words,
Well,
can we spend all of that in time?
yes, we don't
Okay.
have to do the new projects with it.
Mm-hmm.
As our friendly auditor over there will tell you, the state has no expected rate of return on that. And so they expected when they gave us the money, we are going to spend it, so we don't have to give it back. And that grant covers all kinds of facility parts as long as it meets certain code with the cap expenses. And so what we will do is some of the other projects that we had been funding with the charter innovation or those things, right? They will be used with the charter facility grant money instead. And the projects that we are going to be doing this summer with the charter facility grant will be done with the charter innovation money instead.
Okay, so we're not, we will be able to utilize all of that, which is
Yes.
good.
And there is no right of return, correct, from the auditor? Correct.
Okay.
So, and that does, I mean, it plays into some, challenges that we'll see kind of with the budget, again, with that whole transitional piece.
Right.
Because we can't do all of the parking lot projects and get them done by June 30th,
Mm-hmm.
or the
Okay.
playground.
And then.
Plus the weather is definitely not cooperating this year.
Yeah. Paragraph above in the CPS, the grant that we will be using for our startup on the pre-K. Now, we've received our grant contract for year 1, so actually we've not received anything to date then on that.
No, and we've not signed that contract.
Yes, you mentioned that
Yeah. So
they need to correct that.
Yeah, until they correct the budget that they put on there, we can't sign, and we can't ask for reimbursements until it's fully executed.
But we have incurred or earned expenses that will go against that. We just haven't been able to utilize that yet.
Yeah, and that grant goes all the way back until November, and so all of the expenses that we currently have coded, if you look, I believe it's on the cash flow account 11025. Sandy's giving me a nod on that.
Okay.
Those are part of that CSP, because that's technically the preschool coding.
Right, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so-
because you have that on the salary. That is a separate category now for us, yeah.
Yeah, and we are working with Bookkeeping Plus, because this will, the launch pad will be its own separate books, it'll be its own separate bank account,
Mhm.
all of those things. But right now, because of the work that APA, the charter school, people are doing on it, right, it'll pay us for that. So working through all of that, I did note, because they did just send that contract yesterday.
Mhm.
And one of my concerns, and I don't mean concern as in, wow, this is the thing to be really worried about, was that they were going to say year 1 of the grant, by their definition, was gonna be November to June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would have to amend. But on this contract, year one of the grant is November 2024 to November 2025,
Okay.
which means year two of the grant will be November 25 to November 26. So we will actually be able to use some of that funding in that 26-27 school year,
Mhm.
beginning with that programming too.
Good.
So that helps us with our phase-in approach, since, you know, we're a little nervous to do any large purchasing right
Yeah.
now with tariffs and,
So
Just normal
at
things.
this point, then, we do not have a freeze on our CapEx spending, is that?
no, we are back to
Spending it, okay.
what we need to, right? I mean, we are obviously being very cautious,
Mhm.
you know, being as wise as we can with every penny, and do we really, truly need,
Right.
you know, this pencil?
Mhm.
But, you know, because the federal government, at least, those injunctions went into place and they are not freezing the Title I and the food and things like that.
Or so they say.
Or so
today,
they say,
yes.
like I said, I don't know where we are right now. But we are operating under that normal
Mhm.
part, so.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, there's that part.
I'm glad to hear we didn't have a whole lot of damage regarding the storms last week,
No.
other than the,
Roof damage
Roof
again, oh
damage.
my God.
Yeah, and Richie and I came out after the first round, right, to make sure we weren't flooding, we weren't on fire, because obviously it was a little chaotic, and that was very interesting driving, trip, and we were in the buildings until about 1:30 a.m., and I'm sitting there going, these buildings held up like champs, I'm so proud of you, I'm talking to the buildings, right, because I'm like, this is great, and then I had seen a few teeny little leaks, and then we had the oddest thing happen in the pre-academy small gym. We have a big air vent that does gather, you know, dust bunnies in its grid, and we have to get up there and clean it out. It happens. A lot of the dust bunnies were on the floor, and I couldn't figure out, I'm like, the big gusts of wind must have come in from our outside vent into it. Well, I'm not wrong, but it also bent back our metal roof to do that, because I couldn't figure out how it happened. So that's what we're dealing with. I've got a little video of it, but we didn't see it until Monday, so we don't know if that was Wednesday night, Thursday morning storm, or even the weekend storm. I'm gonna guess it was Wednesday's night. We also did have a little bit of damage to our sign in front of the elementary. But in the middle of the rain and wind, we recovered those letters and slapped them back up on that board, and then the guys were able to put the part back on. But at the buildings, if we hadn't done the work we had over, you know, the last 8 years with the roofs and the plumbing and all of those things, right? I mean, our locker rooms were bone dry, no floor damage.
Good.
So very proud.
Hopefully
Again,
this
I
is
know they're
not the
buildings
start
and
of
they're
another
inanimate
roof
objects,
roof
but
repair cycle, I know,
yeah.
so, and
yeah.
So it held up very, very well,
That's good.
and not too much that we have to really be like, oh wow. Now, had we not removed those trees in the parking lot,
Oh, yeah.
that would have been a different story.
Yeah.
So I'm glad, I guess, ironically, that the water-seeking trees left before tornadoes or straight line ones.
and really, I mean, the assessment, from the initial assessment, will the roofing company be able to tell us if there's been more damage from the rain or anything that settled in?
Yeah, and they were up there yesterday. They were also up there today. They're also over at 22nd Street checking little pieces out and things. Right now, because that's the metal roof, I think we're okay as far as any real damage. But, you know, they're gonna be very thorough on that. And I know I put it in the CEO report where not fully sure if we'll go with an insurance claim or not. It'll just really depend if it's within that ballpark. And the less insurance claims we have, obviously, especially right now,
Right.
in the current economic situation, the better. So that might be where some of that facility grant ends up.
Yeah.
we're starting to settle again in the breezeway. How big is that settling right now?
I would say
Just
not
from the repairs again?
huge. Yeah, it's from the repairs. It's the
Okay.
same kind of scenario, and they think that part of Palmer just didn't quite take. It happens, and because of how moist that ground is already, which obviously that's part of why it was sinking. But we got that 5-year plan on it, and so it's all covered.
Good.
If they have to drill in the floor again, they will help repair that or
Perfect.
replace the new tiles. But we've already found some ways around that to get those really nice rubber tiles off of it before they do any more drilling or anything. So that way we don't have to try to color match a year later.
Hopefully we're not on a sinkhole, like my
Why would you
driveway.
put that out there for us? I'm saying,
I got one in my driveway, I know
I say
that.
I have one on my property, but Dave, but we're not talking about. Not an EPA, we don't.
Well, no one really knows what's underneath here. do they?
I mean, if you ask the kids, there's a lot of really creative answers.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah.
Any other further discussion? No, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that. As always, Joe, for your CEO report. Next on the agenda, we have quite a bit of financials for tonight, all right?
Okay, yeah.
We could go in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Make sure I didn't have anything special for that.
because of Beth's schedule.
Okay, gotcha, Beth. All right.
Okay, ready?
So the next thing we'll turn over
Okay.
from that is to Dave. Return for the board
Let's
president
see, our
report.
numbers came in a little later than usual, but if you are not aware, I did email sometime yesterday, late afternoon, to everybody my pre-meeting report. And then you also have what I call my script here, which summarizes the highlights of that. I think that everyone is pretty well familiar with how I have this set up. The top half looks at what our latest year-end results are projected to be, and then the bottom takes a look at the month of February. Everything, of course, here is on a cash basis result, unless it is marked accrual net income. So the first question we always ask is, what has changed since our last board meeting? So we look at the first of our columns here. We have the latest projections as of the end of February and compare that to where we were a month ago. And then we compare that with our amended budget, which I believe we passed at the meeting in early December. And then we then have some summary information on the iteration of our ADM counts there, just to refresh everybody's memory. So the first line of interest I have in bold print. We do know that we lost 54 kids total at the first ADM count. The original budget was 830, and this is over in the very last column. The original budget, the cost structure was based on 830, and we know that we came in at a lower than expected number at 776. And then also we know that at the second ADM count, we lost 22 more in total. We won't break out between virtual and in-house students. The amended budget actually was then amended under the assumption that the remainder of the whole year would be at 776. And of course, then we know that last month, Bookkeeping Plus did adjust the state tuition for March through June to account for the additional 22 loss. And so you can see that comparing the latest with the amended budget, we lost about $122,000 some dollars because of that drop. Both of those drops in the ADM counts. And we did pick up from our last board meeting about 29,000. We're going to be a little bit higher there. So we'll take anything that we can get at that point. Then at the very big bottom of the ADM counts, if you compare our original budget with the latest projection, it looks like we lost about 630,000 due to a lower enrollment, and then an additional 75,600 on the innovation grant. So that puts us a little bit over 700,000. And when that's unexpected, of course, it's very difficult to do much in the way of adjustments because the die is pretty well set. So you can see then total income and total expenses for year end really haven't changed much since last meeting. We picked up about 65,000 more in income, and I think 30 some of that was some additional federal special ed money that was coming in. And total expense is virtually unchanged. And the cash net income or loss in this case is a little bit better than it was last month. We have improved it down to a negative 526,372. However, that is still below our amended budget because the 457,000 loss was assuming that we could hold the line at 776, which we were unable to do. And we'll be, I think, talking a little bit, not much, about our budget for next year. First draft, I think it looks like we have settled on about a 760, which seems to be pretty realistic since we really haven't had a sudden rush in uptick in enrollment. And then, of course, our auditors will appreciate the next line item. It's an add back, but I think it's a fair one to make because what we really want to, as a board particularly, we want to capture what's the economic reality of where we stand and where we will be in the next couple of years. That is what we want to understand more than just perhaps necessary accounting entries that have to be made. But basically, what's caused most of the problem is the facilities grant in the amount of, we'll call it about 520,000, all received last year, all to be spent this year, as we just discussed. And if you add that back, then we're not quite at break even, but we're getting a little closer than we were last time. So that pretty much is where we think we will be at year end. And then some points that I made in my pre-meeting review. If you want more detail, just pull that up on your email. Or, well, it's a copy. Yeah, the copy is here in our board package as well. Sandy, it did look like that there was maybe a reclassification between under income, student fees, and what we're now calling other income, which I think is about 78% related to athletics, because I noticed that one of them, both for the month of February and then also for year end, I noticed one was had been revised down by about 16,000 and the other was up about the same amount. Does that ring a bell with you? Or it's a small or minor amount, but that did catch my eye. So they may be another explanation, but anyhow, we can take a look at that sometime later here to see if there's anything that we do need to take a look at some point. And we just talked about the CapEx being frozen, and I think we, wow, is that one of my accounting?
Building ghosts, it's fine.
Oh, okay, I didn't know I had a treasurer accounting fan club here.
You do.
Okay,
They talk about it late at night too.
Yeah, yes, I imagine. So anyhow, let's see here. CapEx, it's still projected to spend by year end. And I think we pretty much have clarified where we're going on that. And substitute expense is always an interesting item. We had 134,000 last year. Our budget this year was 95,000. It looks like right now we're going to exceed budget, call it about 111,000. Net health insurance is doing quite well for us. Last year we spent about 477,000 in premiums. And this year, the budget amount seems to be holding at 328,548. And then, of course, we do pick up now, being in the marketplace, the TPA, third-party administrator expense, which is about 47, but still, that's coming in better than we have been the last couple years. Let's hope we don't have to lose that benefit. And as we know, usually 50 to 55% of our employees take our coverage here, so less than around half, I guess. Then another thing we always track is our year-to-date, because it is a cumulative ratio, but our debt service coverage ratio, the bank requires 1.25 times. The latest one, after I believe 8 months, is 1.25, down from 1.46 last time. And of course, through in some recent history, last year, again, because of the mismatch in the facilities grant funding receipt and the expenditures, that was a record low 0.47 times, but there was an explanation.
I would say no, it actually wasn't.
It
So
wasn't.
Kyla will
Okay.
correct that with the audit, but because of that unearned versus you actually earned revenue, that service was more than meeting.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I'm very glad to report that. Let's see. I didn't see Kim come in back there. Okay. Well, that's good news then. I won't have to keep reporting that. And then you can see what it was a couple years then before that, just to give you a sense of perspective. Now, a new one that we've not really talked about much is the year-to-date cash available ratio. Ball State recommends 60 days. Basically, what you do is you take your, and again, this is a cumulative, but you take your cash divided by your expense without any depreciation in it. And that's where that number comes from. Now, we know in January, last meeting, it was 2.2 days. And that was because we didn't get the innovation grant like we had expected in January. It's up to 24.95 days. If you look at recent history, 18.53, 30, 13. I don't ever recall us having anywhere close to 60 days on this, but it doesn't appear to have ever been an issue with anyone. But I thought I would throw that in because we acknowledge that our ending cash balance, which we didn't actually state that, did we? Our ending cash balance is up a little bit. Last month it was 205,000, which is very low, and it has improved to 266,000, but that is still much lower than any of us would like. And we're hoping in our auditor's report maybe to get some glimmer of how that might be improved for us next year. That's a big goal of ours, but anyhow, we'll wait to see if there's any good news on that front. Okay, now we go then to our February results. And of course, February is the month that January was supposed to be or wanted to be. January was not a very inspiring month, but only because we did not pick up the $498,100 from the second installment of the grant. And also then, after several months of blanks for our title reimbursement income, we did pick up about 181,000, which certainly made for a very strong January. Excuse me. And let's see, then those two were the most important components of then what is called total income as stated. And actually, though, despite being a stellar month, we were about $40,000 below our budget. But I don't think we're going to worry about that. And then total expense then, was about 218,000 below the amended budget, which is great. But then, as we have learned, one always does have to be careful to interpret the numbers if it looks real good or real bad. I might point out that about 94,000 of that alleged cost savings came basically from a freeze or, let's say, a lack of activity on our capital expenditures. So that, I suppose you can look at that several different directions there. But of course, again, we no longer have a freeze on that, so those numbers should start coming in, which actually would make our costs go up.
Theoretically, I guess it would, but given that a lot of the expenses have already been made for, now that we're coding with the charter facility grant, then you're not gonna see that full $520,000 placeholder line. We're not gonna have all those extra expenses.
Right.
Because most of those will end up either June 25th, right, or July, August.
Yeah.
So they'll be there, and then you're also gonna see, yes, sub expenses are up. We did have a couple pregnancies and, you know, all the fun normal things. But because of one of the instructional positions, or two of the instructional positions at the elementary, where we had to put that student teacher in and things, you'll see an increase in that subline, but you'll see a decrease in the instructional expenses. So it'll pretty much come out in the wash, or we'll come out a little ahead in that scenario.
Yeah, that's that, along with food service reimbursements, always makes our budget variance analysis a little tricky. So, but okay, and then let's see here. For the month, cash net income for a change, $624,477, and that exceeded the budget by a healthy margin. And then our ending cash balance, or reserve, if you want to look at it that way, is beefed up here to $684,519. The problem, though, is my bottom paragraph. I will quote my pre-meeting report here. Unfortunately, February will be the last cash generating month of this year, because for March through June, operating expenses will exceed our operating income each month. And I projected for about 418,000, and this is not unexpected, because usually those last couple months we do have a negative drain on our cash, as well as we have a kind of a low spot right after July, a couple months there. So that's not abnormal. However, that will unfortunately reduce that hefty cash balance we have now down to what we said was about $266,000. And then also, just to, we always want good impression on our auditors here. I always throw in the monthly accrual net income results, so no one can say that we totally neglect that. But from a board standpoint, obviously that cash, what starts out as our cash budget, is the best thing for us to use to track the progress of what we approved and what we thought was going to happen. So, but you'll notice that, interestingly, net income for the month on accrual basis was a loss of $122,000, and that would include a depreciation of expense of $26,500. And we do not forecast the accrual net income. I think that would be rather difficult to do. But if we look at an 8-month accumulation, we're showing a positive $318,000. That would include the depreciation expense, and that number has some meaning because our bank ratio, the debt service coverage ratio, is based on accrual numbers. And basically, you take your net income, you add back depreciation, interest, we have no taxes, and then you do the division. The division is those earnings divided by whatever your principal and interest payments are. And if that top number is not equal or more to the bottom one, you got a problem. So anyhow, that does have a little bit of meaning there. And I think that pretty much sums up where we stand on our key metrics. So is there any other accounting issues, Sandy, any corrections, amplifications, or anything else that maybe board needs to take a look at? Guess not.
We're good to go. We're
Okay.
getting the nod.
Thank you, Dave, as always, for that. We appreciate that. All right, can I get a motion to approve the board treasury report and the monthly financials for February 2025?
I make a motion to approve the board treasurer report and the monthly financials for February 2025.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again, Dave. Thank you, Bookkeeping Plus. Thank you, Sandy, as always, for you guys' work and continue to work with the financials. All right. Next thing on the agenda is our CLA, our presentation from our audit.
Hello.
How are we doing?
I am doing well.
Good,
It's a
good,
pleasure
good.
to be with you guys.
Likewise.
Everyone at the table should have a slide deck. It's a lot easier to read than the lovely financial statements you've already read, probably going to sleep over the months that they've been issued. But that's what we'll go through today, really highlighting not only the financial aspect, things we saw, again, historical look back, as well as your compliance around your federal compliance and state compliance. And then I've got a few industry highlights and things we're seeing as far as the uncertainty and what I'm seeing across my client base as they're trying to handle very similar situation as you guys all are. So on the slide deck, already went through the agenda on slide 2 from that perspective, but then in slide 3, really want to define those engagement terms that us as the external auditors are engaged by governance to complete the audit. And so we are engaged to express an opinion on the June 30th, 2024 financial statements. I realize this is dated now. Jill and I, we finished this up a couple months ago, but calendars didn't align, so wasn't able to join closer to when we were finishing everything. With the financial statements, as well as the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, because you guys receive and expend $750,000 combined of federal dollars, you get the pleasure of having a federal compliance audit as well. So you get 3 opinions in your financial statements. We also summarize audit and compliance observations for both the financial and federal compliance, as well as the very hefty state compliance regulations you have imposed on you by the State Board of Accounts as a charter school. And then completing and finalizing the deliverables, including the federal data collection form. That is a separate deliverable that is only an upload to the federal government that was due March 31st, and it was completed timely, all in accordance as necessary. It basically takes your financial statements, summarizes it into their preferred formats on just the federal compliance. And then Jill has to attest that, hey, this matches, I attest that it matches, and we hit submit type thing, so.
We downloaded their report, so we have it.
Yes, everything is good. So then on slide 4 here, I want to talk through kind of the audit process. We do take a risk-based audit approach. None of that has changed over the years. But when we take a look at the profile of the school, that's where we get to change every year. So we take a look at internal controls. 2024 also had an enhanced audit standard around information technology. So we got to dive deep into more of the security from an IT perspective. What does that look like from access controls, both physically as well as, hey, for any of your networks and those types of things. We are not IT auditors, we do not pretend to be, but we get an understanding of, hey, what risks are out there from an IT perspective that could impact your financial statements. We also take a look at revenue recognition. This was a big one this year with the timing of the funds coming in from the state and the specifics around grants and contribution guidance under the revenue recognition for GAAP. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We take a look at significant estimates. That too had a definition change in the auditing standards. So we had historically pointed out, hey, you have depreciation, you have useful lives that you're taking in, you have functional expenses that you're taking salaries across programs and administrative. Those items are not considered significant anymore because there's a very observable input that goes into that estimate. When we talk about significant estimates, we're looking at ones that may have an actuarial valuation or some of those extra complex areas that would make that significant. We didn't have any significant estimates this year from that perspective with that auditing standard change. You already talked a little bit about it, your debt and your covenants. We take a look in making sure, hey, from a GAAP perspective, you guys are meeting that covenant, or we have to get a waiver from that perspective. We did not need a waiver for year 24. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, that doesn't look quite right, and Jill caught it. So a little different from that perspective.
Does anyone know what the actual ratio was?
I know it was above what it needed to be, but I do not have the exact from that perspective. And then we have the federal compliance with the major programs as well as the state compliance. So all of that goes into our audit plan to get to the final deliverables from that perspective. Federal compliance, you guys got extra lucky because you got to test 2 of your major federal programs this year, which we'll talk a little bit about, and the results of that testing as well in the next slide. Any questions on kind of the risks and approach that we take for our audit process? So Jill gave me a good 45 minutes for this, so buckle up. Just kidding.
Back.
All of a sudden, I gotta go.
No, you're good. You're good. I will make sure to cover the highlights here. But the audit process, really working with Jill and Bookkeeping Plus, we were able to coordinate the timing of it. We actually found a timing that worked really well when students weren't here on campus. So we're going to spend some time over breaks this next cycle for 25's audit, because that was really helpful to have Jill's complete attention, and we can coordinate directly with Sandy at Bookkeeping Plus for visits there as well. The audit adjustments and results on page 5 here, we did not have any past audit adjustments, so there were no differences that were significant enough required an adjustment from that perspective. We did have I said material weakness. I apologize. It is a significant deficiency, so it's not material weakness. An internal control over financial reporting relating to the charter facilities, excuse me, thank you. Charter facilities grant.
That's the 520.
The 520. Yes, I apologize. I had grabbed the wrong language. It is a significant deficiency, not a material weakness.
I mean, it's right here in writing. I feel like we could go back and amend all of your.
No, it's not. The reason we did not consider, yes, dollar amount, it is material. It's very significant for you guys. What we look at is also the qualitative factors that went into the control surrounding this. It was one grant. It was not across every single grant. So that wasn't like there was a significant material breakdown in that control. It was this very specific one grant that we actually had to get clarification from the state on because it was not clear in the guidance. So from that perspective, that took it from that material weakness to that significant deficiency from that perspective. And we did have some adjustments for some non-attest services. We helped with some of the cash to accrual, opening net assets when you're looking at that, as well as the lovely lease standard that everyone loves to hate from that perspective. We are engaged for that, but we did have that material audit adjustment for that deferred revenue. In the end, our opinions are unmodified across all aspects: financial statements, internal control over compliance, and compliance. So those are the gold star of opinions. After everything was said and done, we were comfortable that the financial statements as presented were materially correct in accordance with the GAAP.
Our sticker chart, more gold stars.
Yes, the gold star.
I'm gonna emphasize that,
The
because
gold star.
you know that significant deficiency sounds very, very scary, but it's this weird one-off grant that has been the bane of our existence. We love it, but bane of our existence.
It's one of those things that I tell a lot of folks that I am pleasure working with is there are so many nuances when it comes to nonprofit gap reporting that it can cause these issues and the timing issues, especially when you get into the revenue recognition for grants and contributions. You normally have reimbursement grants, so you're not getting the funds in until after you've expended it. When you have these advance payments where the cash is in before you have the expenses, that's when you get into this kind of icky gray area that really takes that difference from that gap to it, or from that gap accrual to that cash basis, causing that timing issue.
So basically, there's no difference in how one would account for that between a cash basis and an accrual basis. In other words, it's revenue when you receive it on both methods. And then when you spend it, it's all expense against no revenue. So one year will probably look better. One year, in other words, next year may look on an accrual basis, look very bad.
Correct.
Okay, so, but there's basically no difference between the two methods, you're saying?
Over the period of that.
Over a given period.
Over a
set
given period, but the problem is mine is a set period different than that
Yeah.
grant, so that's why it does show that differently from that point in time, from that perspective. Slide 6 here, and we've covered most of the things here already, so I'm not gonna get into that too much. Would like to talk about page 7, so these are the financial statement highlights, some year-over-year analysis, and then really point to, I think, a footnote that will help you guys as you're going through to make sure you understand. So on the statement of financial position, that second column there, you can see some significant changes there, year over year, 24 to 23. You have your cash down. Remember in 23, you also had a loan that closed on like June 29th. And so you had all of that debt and cash, but hadn't paid for that. So 23 already had more cash than 24 from that timing of that payment.
Oh, yeah.
So then the grants receivable, again, you have a lot of reimbursement grants, but your COVID funding under ESSER was really spent down in 23. So you had more outstanding for those expenses versus when you did in 24 from that perspective. Accounts payable as well, attributing to that lower cash as you guys were able to pay down some of those accounts payable and accrued expenses. Again, those timing. Doesn't help your cash position, but deleverages that statement of financial position from that perspective, including a continued payment on the notes payable that you guys have had. So there was about $313,000 that was paid down on that debt last year in 24 as well. Statement of activities. Now this looks a little different than your current perspective because you did have a larger ADM in 24. So state education support was actually up about $455,000, 24 to 23. But in the inverse, your grant revenue was down about $348,000. Again, your COVID funding. It was a one-time, knew it was going to get spending down, and now it's kind of, okay, that's gone. What's the real baseline look like for those grant revenues? Total revenue was pretty flat, about a 1% increase, about $98,000 overall. And then expenses were up about 2% for year over year, about $204,000. Really contribute to those salaries, wages, and professional services. But you had a little bit of an offset with your supplies because the COVID programs and other grant programs, you didn't have some of those expenses that you had as well. The last column here is all of the lovely footnotes, again, that I love to write that attach, but no one loves to read unless you're trying to go to sleep. But I really have circled this last one, this footnote 8, around liquidity. What that is telling the readers is, hey, what are the assets of the organization that are readily available in the next 12 months to meet its requirements, whether that's payables, debt, whatever that looks like. And as you guys are talking through your cash position, what you're going through, making sure you understand how liquid you guys are, because maybe you don't have 60 days cash on hand, but maybe your liquidity, you're comfortable with a 30 or 45 or whatever that looks like. And you say, yep, we got to work on that reserve from that perspective. Something to consider as you're going through that as well.
Let's see, Paul, before we leave the footnotes,
Yep.
I know that we have asked this question in years past, although I think it's been a while. Yeah. I'll just set those aside, go with, wing it with memory here.
Okay.
Restricted funds, you had a reference in one of the footnotes that, these were board-approved designated funds for restriction. And, it listed what usually those comprise. Usually the board would say, well, we don't ever recall restricting anything, perhaps, but it did mention that if there was a liquidity crunch, the board had the right to utilize those funds in the short term. How do you define restricted or designated funds?
Yeah.
Because it's about 250,000, I think, something like
It
that.
was 270 at the end of
270, yeah.
24, and so that you're talking kind of two different aspects here.
Hmm.
Because restrictions, with donor restrictions, is different than designated.
Okay.
With donor restrictions means there is an external party that says how, when,
Mhm.
what you can spend those dollars on.
Mhm.
You don't have any net assets with donor restrictions
Okay.
from that
Mhm.
perspective. All of your assets are sitting without donor restrictions, but there's a piece in the board designated that says, hey, the board at some point
Mhm.
has said, no, those funds are for your student funds. There are the student activities
Okay.
and things like that, hey, no,
Mhm.
that's the students doing their thing. We don't want to touch that. But there's no external requirement for that.
Mhm.
So they're just separated out as designated, and if necessary, you could choose to say, no, we're gonna take those as operations and make you whole again in the future. from that
Yeah,
perspective.
that wouldn't be a good look, taking from the orphans and the children to, yeah.
Typically, when they're designated by something like that, you don't want to do
Yeah.
that, but there is that potential if needed.
I feel like the prom kids would probably be really frustrated if we
Yeah,
clean out their
probably.
account. But yeah, if you look on our financial statements, you'll see like, part of our ECA funds, you'll also see those departmental funds where it says like PE, secondary health, et cetera. That's all that they put, and we put, right, where, okay, we're gonna put $500 to the science department this year, and that's kind of, I don't wanna say their fund money,
Mhm.
right, but hey, now we're looking to do that.
Well, and I know Bookkeeping Plus has a separate volume on internal controls for the extracurricular activities. In addition to, they have two large volumes, so.
Yes, and those are typically our fund accounts that start with like 2, 3. And because of the way ECA works and because, auditors come in and look at ticket stubs, literally, that's why they have like an additional part. Plus, there's typically more hands on that money than it here, right? Because if a kid brings in lunch money, that's going to a secretary, that's going to the business office, that's the end of it.
Mhm.
If a fan comes to a basketball game, it's going to whoever is working that ticket booth, and then that's getting passed off to whoever is, the administrator on duty and all that. So that's why we have to have more thorough controls in that standpoint,
Yes.
because there are more hands in the pot.
And that area, I would think, would be more likely to have fraud.
It could very
It'd be
well.
smaller amounts, but probably would be easier to pull off.
Yeah, and especially with that athletics part, and that's why we are restrictive with who works those and all the documentation required. If you happen to be so lucky to get to do tickets, right, there is a form in there where, this is our beginning balance. Dave has signed off on it, the athletic director. The ticket taker has counted that money, made sure the ticket number that's first on there has signed that. At the end of the night, they have counted out the money, and Dave or admin on duty has checked
Mhm.
against that, even the ticket stub number, and then signed off and all of that, and then it goes through our normal internal controls as well, so. Pretty thorough on it to the
I may
extent
be jumping
possible.
ahead, but I thought as part of just the overall audit, you made reference to the 990. I think we got one in, we had an extension, and we were even late after it got extended. Now, I know my service club, I have to file that. And what kind of jeopardy, if any, does that put us in?
Yeah, so you jumped ahead a little on me, but I'm
Oh,
happy to
well, then
discuss it.
I'm sorry,
Can we come back to that?
yes, we
Okay.
come back to that. That's what happens when I'm going by memory here.
No, you're good, you're good. So any questions on the financial statements or, from federal compliance for now? Because state compliance is next on my list, because this is a very good thing. Like, this report is very, very good from the state compliance side.
Now, all of these numbers are on a GAAP basis. You have basically three different, well, you have the balance sheet, then you have two different views of your income statement, and then of course the cash flow reconcile. Because we did some research a while back to prove to one of our board consultants that we did know something about internal controls. And I understood that the State Board of Accounts, Ball State requires GAAP accounting be applied, but the State Board of Accounts prefers cash basis and a fund accounting. But is it safe to say that everything, all of these statements would be strictly on a GAAP basis?
Correct, these are on full accrual GAAP basis.
Okay.
SBOA requires their reporting throughout the year on a cash basis. So the
Okay.
Form 9 and all
Mhm,
of those
yeah.
are on a cash basis, but their annual report is a GAAP
I see.
accrual basis.
Okay, technical question, but we have, I think as a board, we have tried to educate ourselves as to, how some of these things work, because people do expect the board to actually know what's going on, I think, so that's why I asked that.
No,
I'll
great
be-
questions.
Okay, I'll be quiet now.
So on slide 8, or excuse me, page 8, the state compliance results, as Jill mentioned, there are a lot of different things that we are required to look at, including ticket stubs for your athletic events. And they're listed here in the green section. But in the end, we had one comment this year, and it was around the ADM enrollment documentation. However, it has gotten significantly better during our tenure working with the school. In 2023, there were 13 of 60 students that did not have consistent consistent documentation in their files. This year for 2024, there were 7 of the 60 that were tested. So again, continuous improvement. And we have worked with Jill to say, hey, if you absolutely have done everything possible to get this form that you require and can't get it, document your attempts, because that counts, that you are doing your thing. So I expect this to continue to show that continued decrease and improvement there. But of all the areas, this is a huge thing that you guys are doing very, very well from the state compliance perspective.
We look much better than compared to other schools.
So I have the pleasure of working with virtual and brick and mortar.
Okay.
I would say the virtual schools, we tested a very high level, just because of the risk profile there. And they always have. I have one school that has nothing, but they have a very sophisticated engagement management organization they use. Most schools have an ADM item on them, or they're so small, they have enough hands and type of student they're getting from. But 90% have a documentation finding. Now, the problem that really gets the attention of the state is if you have an enrollment problem. So you would have a student that you've certified, but then you don't have the enrollment records to support that, hey, that person was actually here that you're getting funding for. And you guys are staying out of that area from that perspective. Yes, great question. Slide 9 is the federal compliance. Again, pleasure of working on 2 different major programs this year with your child nutrition cluster, your food program, as well as your Title I. Again, not material weakness, significant deficiency. Apologize on the typo there for that significant audit adjustment. But that is on your internal control over financial reporting. So that's that first opinion on the compliance side. The awesome thing is we had double the programs and we had no compliance findings this year, which is fantastic. Previously, we had tested the ESSER dollars and there was a specific special test around wages and prevailing wages for your construction contracts. So which is, again, very nitty gritty, but it's right or wrong when it comes to compliance, and we didn't have anything under these 2 major programs from a compliance standpoint. So very, very big gold star from that perspective. on the federal compliance side. So the last couple slides here, it's got my contact information in it, as well as the senior associate, Steve Ficklin. She was with us last year as well. She was unavailable to attend today. And then there's a QR code. We have a wonderful plethora of thought leadership. If you would care to sign up, you can scan that, sign up your email. If you need CPE, you get free CPE for that from that perspective as well. But on slide 10 here, some industry insights that we've really seen across our nonprofits and our schools. And I've highlighted half the slide here, I feel like, but you guys have so many different things you're going through. So one of them is that labor shortage and turnover and managing your people, your culture, and everything. You guys aren't alone in that from that perspective. I have some folks that still have just the plethora of long-term substitutes from that perspective, what that looks like. So I don't have an answer for that. I don't see it going away anytime soon, but you guys do have that you're working with as well. Talked about number 3 a little bit with cybersecurity and the technology costs. You don't want to be insurance poor, but you have to understand your risk that you have in that cyberspace. The bad guys want your student information. They want your people information. I actually, fun story, not fun, but a story that happened to me is I had another organization I work with, I got a strange email and I wasn't expecting it. So we reported it internally and said, no, this is a phishing attempt. So we called them and said, hey, you guys got some bad guys in there. And they're like, oh, is it this person? I'm like, oh, so you know about that, but no, it's someone else. So they had multiple bad actors. And so it was just very quickly how it got 1,000 emails out to folks from that perspective. So just making sure you know your risks, you know your insurance coverages, making sure you're doing the due diligence, whether that's internal phishing or your security scans or whatever that looks like for you guys, and you're comfortable with that risk perspective.
Now, you concluded that we had adequate internal controls over cybersecurity then?
We are not IT auditors.
Right.
We took a look at the IT and the security structure around specifically the controls that prevent the financial records from being being a concern.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any concerns with that, but we did not engage an IT specialist and say, hey, you've got patches.
We're pretty well reasonably safe.
Correct. We did not have anything that we'd say, hey, this is a big red flag or anything like that.
Yeah, and I will say from our cybersecurity standpoint, it's getting really hard lately to even log on to our computers because we're doing a lot of extra multi-factor authentication, and it seems about, I don't know, every 4 weeks, IT has added another layer of protection to us. We do have intrusion tests and drills that go with that. We use software engineers through Stratosphere that are checking a lot of the fun things that everybody else is as well. Our student management system, there was that huge breach with PowerSchool. We do not have PowerSchool. We have Skyward, and right now, anybody that has that higher level access, that would be the one that they need to hack to get to all the other things. We have another layer of MFA on it, and again, it's getting really hard to just pull something up because there's so many layers there. And we also, that is something that Eric Rich, our insurance agent, made sure that we have very thorough cybersecurity coverage for ransomware. Like if there's a data breach, we have obviously it's going to cost us some money, right? Mm-hmm. But they come in, they do all of the things. They get the credit monitoring, they get the notifications, and so it's a pretty high level account for us. But just as AI, if you wanted to block an AI, ChatGPT, AI can reason and find a new way to, unblock itself. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to looking at some of your materials. But that is high for us, especially, Kim has had this a few times in the business office where somebody's QuickBooks get hacked and then they're sending us a new invoice. It looks like it's from the legitimate company that we do business with, and then they're like, no, we need you to do an ACH transfer. We don't know you. We're sorry. We don't know who you are. So we may have not paid some bills because we didn't trust somebody, but we have not paid bills because we're over trusting. Good job, Kim.
So the last one here, you guys have already talked about, was really that cash management, as well as just managing all of the political side of things. You got the state and the federal, with the change in both sides here in the state. And when you're doing that on all of these reimbursement grants, you're going to have a pretty tight cash budget, especially in those months when operations are just different. Your summer months are gonna look different. The other thing you can make sure is, are you leveraging the debt that you have, or the ability to use that line of credit that you have if needed as well? So making sure you're making, decisions that are going to benefit versus hinder from that perspective. So, hey, I have a short term, hey, I need to use that line of credit for whatever expense that month, but you're paying it off. You're not taking out additional long-term debt from that perspective, unless it's gonna go with your strategic vision and where you're going. So all the things that we're seeing from that perspective, managing that cash on hand, what does your liquidity policy look like? What is our potential for that line of credit if you need it? Those types of things. That is what I have. Thank you guys very much from that perspective. If there's any questions, happy that haven't been asked, happy to.
Do you have, what might be an ideal cash balance, let's say at the end of each year for a school like ours? Any thoughts on that? I know that's kind of a hard one.
Industry would see typically 60 days cash on hand from that perspective for most of my nonprofits that I get to work with. Now, some of my larger institutions do go closer to that 90, 120, especially those in like the higher ed space with the summer, depending on how that looks. But they have a lot of that Title IV federal aid as well. So
Not sure what our cash balance would be if we had 60 days. At any rate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well, hey, thank you. Also give a shout out to Angie for all the record keeping and hunting down documents and
Thank you, Angie.
Yes, thank you.
continuous, all that on the enrollment stuff. So obviously she takes that very seriously. Your attention, please.
This is what I get paid for.
Well, yes, but we still appreciate that you do it so well, because there are people in life that get paid for jobs that don't maybe do that as well as you do, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, you've interacted with some people from other places, out of state registrars,
Yes.
those people,
Yes.
no Indiana people. We like our Indians.
I'm
Hey,
gonna see myself happening, but thank you so much for your
Thank you so
time.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So question,
Okay.
you're with us, aren't you?
Yes.
And, I'll hold you to it, but didn't know if that was a renewal yet for them.
No, we're actually in process of getting our contracts approved by the state to then get them over for you guys to sign, so.
Looking forward to it.
Have a great one, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you as always for that. Next thing on the agenda is APA 2025-2026 budget first reading and discussion.
All right, so that leads us to Beth. Hey, Beth.
Hello. Hello.
There we go.
Oh, there she is.
All right, so Beth is
I'm
gonna
here.
jump in on this for us.
Oh, wow.
And I think she's got some limited time because of another board meeting she's quasi in.
Nope, I'm actually done, so I'm good actually.
Oh,
So I'm good.
all right. Well, then she's ours all night. So,
Yeah, you can have me for how long you need. So we've done our first pass, and like most years, our first pass is not as pretty as we'd like, obviously, but there's so many things that are factors that we just don't know. So we always like to wait till after session finishes to see what happens there, as well as, at the end of school, still finding out who's going to be coming and going for the next year and things like that. But for the basis of it, we have been conservative on the revenue and said we put an increase of about 2% for the revenue side of things. We also have to factor in, that's a little bit different this year than what we normally have, is the CSP Quality Schools grant that we have. And we have to now separate that out into two separate budgets because it's actually, we have to keep books and everything separate for that. So I've been conservative on that, and then Jill and I, we're gonna be meeting next week to go over some more details on that and how we can split out, because I think that'll take some costs down for that. Our normal budget, we have about 3% for increases on expenses, about 15% on the insurance, and we did about $50,000 increase just on our health insurance since it's a different model of what we've been using. And then we've done about 10% on utilities. So with that, we've got, basically we've gone through all the revenues that we feel like we're going to have. And our revenues are about almost $9.5 million as far as our revenue. And then our expenses, where they stand right now, which again, there's going to be lots of adjustments, there's about 10.3 million. So we're short about 900,000, which sounds horrible, but I mean, last year, I hate to say this, we were over $1 million last year.
Yeah, the first
I
round.
mean, so I know that seems high, but there's just so many factors that we don't know. And like you said, we go through, where we are at this point, and we know, and we've done this based off of an ADM of 760. So we know we're gonna have to make some additional cuts because our ADM, we are again trying to be conservative because of being a little bit lower this year. So that's the other thing. And we obviously always hope for it to be higher, but again, we try to be more realistic or on the low side of things. So, from where we are right now, I don't feel like it's horrible. Like, I think there's a lot of moving pieces, and obviously we always get to where we need to be. But, I just wanted to let everyone know that, we've really put a lot of work in so far working on this. And then, like I said, Jill and Sandy and I are going to be meeting next week, to go into this a little bit further.
Okay. Let's see. Now, you mentioned splitting. Okay, the CSP quality, when you say splitting that off, that is because the pre-K has to be a separate entity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the root of that your statement there.
Well, it's sort of it's a separate entity, but it's still under the same tax ID number.
Okay.
So, but it's separate from the school. Yeah, so it has to be separate from that perspective, but it is together. So, so that's why we will separate it, but it, in the end, will come back together.
Okay. On your, I didn't have a chance to look at the salary schedule. What assumption were we making on health insurance there?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we've just increased it like $50,000 because it's different, because everyone, it depends on what their plans are.
Okay.
And things like that. So, it really, it's just a different model.
In other words, what we used to was sort of assume that everybody would have some kind of coverage just in case they, because we didn't know who would, who wouldn't. But we're not doing that because that, in prior years, that kind of jacked it up almost 200,000.
And we can't really do that now with the ICRA because it's age-based.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
One of the things, this is good and bad for us. So we had, for the last several years, been doing our renewal on June 1st. That really helped us knowing for the full budget year what that cost was going to be. And that also helped employees know going into the summer, where their insurance was going to be. And so if they needed to make any, educated decisions on that or their future career parts, right, they could do that. Now, because of the way ICRA works, it has to be a January 1 renewal. And so we know what our expenses are going to be from July 1 to December 31st based off of the current rates. But what we don't know is, if someone had a baby, which we've had, if they're going to add them to our insurance. If we are going to have someone who had a family plan retire and then hire a first-year teacher who has a much lower cost and no family plan. And so that makes this one a little more challenging, and we can't put a lot of buffer in there because it's not going to, and you can't really average it out and see what it is because it's such a drastic.
Actually, that's more accurate.
It is. It's
right,
it's pinpoint accurate.
Months, yeah, we know for 6 months what the costs are going to be for the most part.
Yeah, and we also know because of the way that the ICRA is designed that typically an increase, just for the employer, is not gonna really be more than 5 to 7%. Now, with that caveat said, like I said earlier, it could be different at this point in the evening, we don't know, where those increases may or may not end up. But we've done the best we can with that health insurance part because you're not entirely sure, right? So that is one of the new challenges there.
Now, is it not still true that a good chunk of that 850,000 shortfall would be the expenditures of most of that facilities grant, which started off at about rounded up to 520,000. So we just heard from the auditor that had to be recognized the year we received it, which made the bottom line look better, but it's going to make the bottom line look worse this coming year because isn't most of that, or 500,000 of that, would be those expenditures? Am I right or wrong on that?
No,
No, that's related to this year's budget.
yeah,
So it's nothing to do with next year's budget.
yeah,
But it would show up as expenses, right?
we,
No, we're expensing it right now as we speak. It's in this year's budget.
yeah, so we'll have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and right now,
Okay.
those expenses aren't really in here because we still have to kind of hash out where that's gonna
Right,
be.
because they bumped up the expiration date. Therefore, yeah, we've got to hurry and get all of those in. Okay. Well, in a way, that makes the bottom line look even worse then.
Well,
Because before we could say, well, really, it looks bad, but that's a phantom. But now we will have some cutting to do, I think.
there's always trimming with a budget, and, one of the things you asked kind of about salaries right now, right? We've put in, because we have our salary schedule for, the certified staff, those additions are already in the budget as it currently stands, and then put in a buffer there, to account for trying to see what we can do with each position that we have. We have been pretty aggressive over at least the last 5 years at getting our employees that don't fall under that certified. So you're looking at like your administrators, you're looking at your aides, you're looking at maintenance, getting them into that reasonable space. The state does not really emphasize funding in those very important support places. So one of the things is that every employee at APA, part-time, full-time, whatever, makes at minimum $15 an hour. And that is fairly significant, especially when we're looking at those aide positions. Because it's not happening at a lot of schools, plus we offer the full-time hours and the full-time benefits and things. But, to be realistic, we might not be able to do a raise every year for everybody. And we don't do that with the teachers either. When they get their years of service with that salary schedule, right, it's about every 2 years that they are considered for a raise. And so because we've been aggressive in investing into those other categories, we may not be able to see as much increase there or not, but we shall see, and that's a lot for us to work through.
That's just at the beginning, but do you foresee us being having a little bit better cash cushion, let's say, at the end of next year than we are now, or is it maybe too early to even tell on that?
I still think it's a little early. I'm just gonna be honest, it's gonna be tight. It just all depends on what happens with session and everything.
Yeah.
But that's what we're working on so that we can try to increase that sum.
Yeah, and we will see for this year, our ending cash will be better than we are projecting. Given the expenses, given now that, reconfiguring how that charter facility grant is going, and, we've said, okay, we don't that. So we're not going to have, and that, I guess I was trying to explain that, we're not gonna just all of a sudden have $520,000 in capital expenses, right? some of that that's currently on our cash flow or the reporting is already completed. So it'll just reduce. So that will help, especially as we're looking forward, right? Because we have the people we have, and we have the programs we have, and we have expenses we have because it's what's best for our kiddos. And it's what's needed for those kids. And so that may mean that, you know, we have to maybe leave a tree up for a little bit or whatever. But at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that that money is still taking care of those kids and that we're being as smart as we can with that.
Well, this is typical of our first draft, so.
Oh, yeah, this one with this current session,
Yeah.
this is the weirdest budget session that has happened
Yeah.
since I've been in this position, and
Almost like trying to follow the stock market now. isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, wow,
yeah, and it's one of those things where I think the session's the 28th or 29th, and they're hoping to get done on Friday, the 25th, because they don't want to
They're
come
going a
back.
little later this year, aren't they?
Oh, they're gonna go down to the wire. This is gonna happen at like 4 a.m. on probably the 26th, I'm guessing. If that happens, we're all buying lottery tickets. That'll help take care of that budget challenge too, right? 10% of those earnings come to APA. But we are gonna be on the wire because nobody knows. There's so many intricate pieces of legislation out there and so many hidden, I don't want to say pitfalls or traps, right? But charter schools have always been a negotiating tool in that budget part. Throw in the vouchers and now this push to explore the property taxes or the referendum sharing or this or that. At this point, I don't think that Senate or House leadership or the governor's office is thrilled because they should have already had their property tax part figured out. And I mean, very ambitious that they think they could figure that all out right during this volatile session, as well as looking at our federal part. But I mean, to be absolutely honest, there are going to be facility projects that we could have afforded to do a year ago that we will not be able to afford for another 5 years when we're looking at the tariffs and the cost of steel and all of that stuff. It feels very much like we did during COVID, where it was, oh, well, who's got this computer chip or who's got that or here's this. And so we're just going to have to be as strategic as possible on all of it. We will have to leverage some of our collateral and, you know, make sure that we are keeping as much cash available because we just don't know.
Well, there's no right or wrong numbers. Of course, when times get tough, the bigger cushion is always a good thing to have. But again, there's no magic right or wrong levels or anything. You just deal with what you have as best you can. So.
Thank you, everyone. Anyone have any other questions at all? All right, thank you, Beth. Thank you, Sandy, for that presentation. We appreciate it. I'm sure we'll.
Nice looking outfit there. You look very dressed
fancy,
up.
very dressed
Yes,
up.
must have been a fancy meeting you were attending.
So, well,
Talk to you later.
bye, Beth and Sandy. See you soon.
Bye.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is new business. It's actually two presentations from our Director Miller of the APA Spotlight of 29th Street and also the Indiana High School Diploma and Grad Pathway Changes.
Do it in 15 minutes, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's about as convoluted as the funding, so. All right, hold on to your pants there, right?
Anybody else need to stand up and stretch for a minute?
Should have made you wait for someone.
Yeah.
I've seen one of those weeks already.
Huh?
I've seen one of those weeks already.
Oh, it has, for sure.
I have the graduation stuff, but
Is everybody all right if I stand over here?
Yeah.
Is it all right if I stand behind you here?
Need a little closer, Steve.
All right, so I'm gonna try to go through this portion as quick and as succinct as I can, because for those of you that are not aware, in December, the state board, as well as the legislature, has passed and accepted a new graduation requirement, so a new diploma type for the class of 2029 and beyond. So right now, we are truly living in two separate worlds. So in your packet, I wanted to provide you a snapshot of those two different worlds. So this is what it looks like. So just in regards to the current Core 40 diploma, and then what they are referring to as the GPS diploma. So I'm just going to go, as I said, I'm going to try to go real quickly through this. So in regards to things that we are taking a look at, we are looking at redefining and redesigning. So as far as the redefinition, if you take a look at the term credit, so over the course of the last 20 years, the idea of credit has meant seat time. So we are talking about the amount of seat time that a student has in the classroom, working towards making sure that our teachers are hitting various standards, specific standards across the content, and then making sure that we are measuring that learning systematically through standardization, moving through that way. Now, we have a new term about measuring proficiency. So we are now looking for high school students in grades 9 through 12 in the 2029 and beyond to meet proficiency standards within that content area. And so what those measures look like, we have some local control with that. There's going to be some other input that's going to be provided by the state. We have, as far as the full design and what it looks like, it is not fully written. We have been given the baseline of the rules, but not all of the rules. But as we move forward, we're trying to find a very aggressive way to start measuring proficiency and allowing our cadets to move towards proficiency. Another important thing to have an understanding of is work-based learning, specifically what work-based learning is, the number of hours that are going to be required. It is going to require us as a corporation to develop relationships with community partners. It is going to force us to have partnerships with various training agencies for unpaid and paid apprenticeships, job shadowing opportunities. So it is going to be a lot of legwork over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, trying to make sure that we are providing our cadets the opportunities that work-based learning is going to require. So just a couple reminders about the diploma. So currently, you have 3 types of diplomas you can earn, right? You have your standard Core 40, you have your academic honors, and you have your academic technical honors, okay? Those are the 3 types. For the class of 2029, those no longer exist, okay? And we'll go through the types that they, what they have, but that language is going to be going away. So whenever we sit down and you see some of the specifics of the new diploma, it's going to take some really, you're going to have to go back, reflect on it, and come back, because this has been something that I've immersed myself in for the last 6 months, and I just now feel comfortable getting up here in front of staff and everybody and communicating it. So with that, the new high school diploma, we're going to talk about seals. So everyone is going to earn the same high school diploma, but the additions are seals. So if you look on the second sheet that is provided for you, there are 2 levels for 3 different types of seals. Okay, so you have an enrollment seal, you have an employment seal, or you have an enlistment and service seal. So with those seals, you have an honor seal and you have an honor seals plus. Okay, so all of the requirements that are there, so I've broken them down. I've taken the state documents. They've been placed in various things. I try to make a document here for you to be able to try to just kind of see have a visual of the way that it's going to be broken down. But there is going to be a form sent to us and provided by the DOE where we're going to have to document a communication standard. We're going to have to document a student's ability to collaborate and work amongst their peers. And we are also going to have a work ethic measurement, right? So a lot of unique things. As you can see, we are also going to have some flexibility to be able to create some of our own local pathways, which we already have CAP created, but it's going to allow us to be a little bit more creative as we go. So just in regards to some of the academic requirements, so right over here is the Core 40. So if you are looking at the Core 40, so 8 English credits. As standard, you would have 2 credits of English 9, 2 credits of English 10, 2 credits of English 11, and then 2 of English 12. Okay? The only thing that is now required for a diploma under the GPS is going to be English 9. But they still, a student is still going to have to earn 8 English credits. Okay? So, same thing with math. Math, the only course that is required for all students is Algebra 1. 2 credits of Algebra 1. Okay?
But they still gotta get 6 total credits
But they
in
still
a
have to
math
earn 6 total
type of-
credits in math. Right, exactly. So, this is, I just want to be very clear, this is one of the difficulties with what has been accepted by the state and then what is also being pushed out with the requirements for the seals. So that's where I want to make sure that we, whenever we come back to it.
Okay.
Some of the big changes, so for us, science, that has now dropped from 6 to 4. So now the only science class that is required is Bio 1. And then if you take a look, the other one that has changed, PE, that goes from 1 credit, or from 2 credits down to 1. Health and wellness remains at 1. But the big part to pay attention to is this portion right here, the 12 personalized electives. Okay, that as well as the new STEM requirement. So there's 2 credits of what are required with STEM. And then computer science and communication. Those are really the new language. Okay, that's, now, the other one that I want to make sure that I throw out there, and this is one of the discussions, that is the idea of world perspectives. So we have now broadened what world perspectives are. World perspectives, as far as the definition from the state, does not just include, so this would include your world history, your world geography, anything that has a global type of study to it in the social studies realm, but it is also fulfilled by foreign languages. So foreign language now falls under that title.
World perspectives.
Yeah, yeah. So anything that deals with the examination of cultures, the examination of different portions of the world is now identified as a world perspective. Okay? So as I said, very, very broad terms right now. So I just want to make sure that we have an understanding of the seals. I said that there is not going to be an academic honors diploma, but if you take a look at the enrollment seal, specifically the honors seal and the honors seal plus, those almost identically mirror the requirements for the former academic honors diploma. Now, the challenge that we have locally, I know we've been talking a lot about finance tonight, the state still has not told us what the financial incentive is for academic honors seals. There was a financial incentive, I cannot remember what it was, Joe, for academic honors diplomas.
So it's part of the honors grant and they've reworked it, but historically that was about $900 per academic honors diploma earned by the previous year.
So as of right now, they have not secured any funding for that in regards to what. Now, obviously, we are still 4 years away from the first 2029 cohort graduate, but they have not provided any type of clarity as far as that. However,
I also, can you emphasize that this is starting with this incoming class of freshmen?
Freshmen, yes, current eighth graders.
Just so the board knows that
Current-
it has
yes,
fly in
current-
mind and.
Yes, this is
Yes.
current eighth graders, right, current eighth graders. So,
What it looks like then is that like our current eighth graders have to decide like now if they want to go towards enrollment, employment, or enlistment, like
yeah,
as an eighth grader.
yes
Is
and no.
that- is-
So that's the one thing that we are trying to, that has yet to be determined about how easy is it going to be for us to jump from one track to another. Okay, now, with that being said, I just want to make sure everybody is, clear. The freshman year, that first year of high school is truly not as impacted as the next 3 years will be. Okay, because we still have the requirement for algebra, algebra 1. We still have the requirement for English 9. Biology is our traditional, ninth grade science. So everything within that first year is not going to be as impacted as the sophomore year is really going to be our big year, if I'm being very honest. The sophomore year is going to be very huge. However, we will have some students that are well aware of what they want to do, as we move forward. So they would be able to do a 4-year plan and be on that track. But as far as the move is going there, so in regards to those seals, the employment seal, if you take a look, here's the unique piece. I want to make sure that everybody, and I try to emphasize this at our scheduling meetings, I'm trying to emphasize this with our current eighth graders. There is a new attendance requirement to earn these seals. So.
Is that for all of them?
So that would be for the employment and the enlistment and service seal.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Now, here's the question that I would hope. What is the attendance goal?
I was gonna say, yes, this is me, tennis school.
Yeah. So I was
Would you
looking to
like
see
to
what
know?
was it.
Hey, let's take some bets on this one. Let's figure this
All
out.
right, so George, what do you think? How many days for the year would a student be permitted to miss before they are disqualified?
From one of these, they already get a letter sent to home when they miss 5 to 7 days.
Yeah.
So the teacher and me, I would say 15,
Okay.
but DOE probably says 25 or 50.
Oh, you're
Oh,
good.
that's a lot.
You're giving a lot.
You're gonna go
of
10?
man.
Yeah.
Angie?
I was thinking like around 15.
Okay,
I was thinking 10.
okay.
2 weeks, I would call it.
2 weeks?
14
I was gonna say 21 days.
Okay, all right.
Man, they're over what you can do.
Pretty close.
3?
3.
days.
Three.
3 years.
Wow.
3 per year is the requirement, yeah. So they cannot,
Wow.
they cannot,
That's gonna be tight.
so they
Wow.
cannot have
That's
more than,
Now,
over a 4-year
They
plan.
can have the
Does
honors.
that mean unexcused absences or it's,
Absences.
Absences.
so if you
That's
are
what-
sick with
that
the
is-
flu?
That is the way that it is currently given to us.
Oh, that.
Now, there is going to
Wow.
obviously have to be, there's rewrites being sent with the attendance. The original writing before it went to committee was 6 days, which we felt, okay, we could navigate, if it was 6 excused days,
Right,
and
yeah.
then work through, but now with the way that the law's been written, it's 3. So, yeah, it's,
Wow.
yeah.
That's
So-
gonna be rough.
If you, sorry not to cut you off, what is the average days a student miss here at APA? Like, just say that.
It's across the board, not just here.
I would say this is across
30?
the board.
Is it just an average student? What is it?
So I would tell you if we're counting excused and
Yeah.
everything, I would tell you that the average is probably 12 to 15.
Okay.
And that's being very, very
Yeah.
conservative.
Conservative, yeah.
And whenever I say that, I'm talking, the students that miss the days because they have the regular doctor's appointment, the monthly orthodontist appointments, the monthly, physical therapy or the weekly
Right.
physical therapy, like that are excused and we have documentation of where they're at, where they're going, why they're going. So it is,
That almost sounds like discrimination against like special needs or something, because
So it
they're gonna
is-
have those
I'm
types
sure
of
that will
appointments.
probably play out.
Yeah, it's going to, there's going to be a lot of challenges here. So it's all pushing towards what they are considering to be the employability standards. Right, now,
Kids going to school. Yeah.
So with that being said, obviously, there's a lot of information here in front of you. There's going to be a lot of questions about it.
Yeah.
But with this, some of the things that we're taking a look at here locally, obviously, student attendance is a huge concern. We, being myself, Jill, Darnell is a part of this, Mr. Williams, as well as Captain Henry. And then as we continue to push this out, building community connections, making sure that we have a route to be able to connect our cadets later to appropriate job shadowing opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities, et cetera. So those are the things that we're looking on. Obviously, we are trying to identify ways to emphasize employability, skill development, and those types of behaviors. So as we look at this, I want to make you aware that the other portion that I would like to do today is I'd like to make you aware of some of the concerns that we have internally. I want to acknowledge a few things that are taking place here at 29th Street. I want to make you aware of the plan that I want to put before you today for your consideration. And this is in regards to our daily academic schedule here at 29th Street. So one of the concerns that we have as we operate right now, we operate on what is referred to as a modified block schedule. Okay, so our modified block, for instance, on Mondays, our cadets go to every class period. So they go from homeroom.
Is that 8 classes?
Yeah, all 8 classes. So they see 9 different teachers throughout the day on Monday. Tuesday through Friday, that is when they are in the 90-minute blocks. So 90-minute blocks, so on Tuesday and Thursday, they have blocks 1 through 4. Wednesday, Friday, they are blocks 5 through 8. The challenge that the block schedule has presented to us over the course of the last 2 years, with attendance being a concern, is that our cadets are having irregular contact with the curriculum and with the staff. So if a student were to get sick, and we have the expectation now across all schools, that you have to be 24 hours fever-free or vomit-free before you are able to return to work or return to school. So if they become sick Wednesday evening and they are out all day Thursday and that fever doesn't break until Thursday evening, now they are out again on Friday. So that means that they will go 4 days, until they actually have contact with, some teachers, some specific teachers. So there is challenges there, all right? Along with that, there are some planning challenges with a 90-minute block. As we have discussed, our staff turnover, we have had some staff turnover that has not participated with some of the project-based learning training that we had put in place about 4 years ago. So those hands-on professional development things and the push towards project-based learning, really has stagnated, and just being honest, with some of our staff turnover. But within that 90-minute block, we have tried to put in place a rotational model, and we try to maintain that with fidelity in the pre-academy, for instance, grades 6, 7, and 8, and it presents challenges, right? So there's a specific portion of the rotational model that specifically in a 90-minute block with independent work. That independent work, as we make that rotation, okay, with independent work, so we have our teacher at the front of the room or in a small group working, we have to trust that our cadets are able to handle peer-to-peer relationships and work independently. We need to trust that our staff is planning appropriately to provide that independent work, but in there, that creates some of the peer-to-peer drama and peer-to-peer conflict that we have experienced, okay? And that is a portion of what we have identified as some of our behavior challenges. Okay, if you have seen or been contacted by families, or if you've seen our social media, and we hear the conversation about bullying is not being addressed. Okay, it is a portion, is it constant conflict? Yes, but it is amongst peers, and it is taking place within their flights, it is taking place within their peer groups, and it is stuff that then continues on over into social media, it continues on into, other public places, and so as we go through, Joe.
I say, and I think it's important to reiterate that we're not saying bullying, the legal definition is, we're talking about that peer-to-peer
Peer-to-peer conflict, right.
Where that we've been doing a lot of bullying investigations. We're also speaking like with student groups and things, to kind of work on that, because that word is so overused now. We see a lot, oh, well, they're bullying me. Well, you just called their parent a blah, blah, blah. Well, yes, but, blah, blah, blah. And it goes back and forth, and that's where that peer-to-peer conflict is. And kids are very creative, plus having access to that social media part, right? Even if we squash that, it's going to continue. And so this is kind of part of that, but also making sure that we are hearing people, because true bullying does happen, right? Let's not be blind to that. And we are weeding that out and trying to address that, so that this could possibly help more so.
And then the last thing that I want to address as far as the 90-minute block, some of the challenge that we have truly is stamina, right? It is stamina about trying to stay, in our current community, the current culture, the idea of maintaining a student's attention on a specific topic or subject for 90 minutes. I can't even get my own to sit down and watch a 90-minute movie, let alone, attention. So we're talking about stamina, and then that is also stamina for our staff. Our staff at times struggle to maintain, throughout the entire period, and not only throughout the entire period, but the length of a semester. Specifically for some of our academy staff that are teaching 5 or 6 different classes, that have multiple electives, it just creates some stamina. Along with that, I know Lisa Clara's experienced it, I believe, with, D26 and some of the other programs, and, trying to make sure at times our calendar and our schedule does not align very well with our community partners. So D26, for those kids that are in morning D26, as they make the transition with our current schedule, they show up and they have missed the first 20 minutes of that second block class. And it has just kind of created some tension as far as the way that, are we counting them absent? Is that when are they expected to be here? It is a huge thing, specifically for those kids. We have some of our cadets that have access to vehicles. We have some of them that do not. We have some that, that have access to after D26, they want to go grab something from the, from Subway, or go to Get-Go and go get something, their lunch, to bring it here to us, with themselves. And it just, there's not that amount of leave time to be able to move, okay? Along with that, the other things that we're looking at opportunities for personalization, and as far as on-campus availability and support. And whenever I say on-campus availability and support, I am talking about our special education population, our high ability population, our English as second language population, every identified population, being able to provide them the supports that they need. So is there a way for us to identify a way to do that? So that moves us to number 5, the intentional and specific instructional supports for those identified groups. And then we really want to focus on academic workload. We have some cadets that 8 periods in an organization, so the executive functioning skills of being able to organize themselves, okay, is not a skill that is well developed yet. So we have a responsibility, I feel, as adults, as educators, to help support that development. So as we take a look, how can we do that? And this is a portion of that proposal, okay? So if you take a look here, the pre-academy suggestion is here to the left. The academy suggestion is here to the right. So this would be, what this would be, it would be a 9-week quarter, okay, where students would be assigned to 5 courses with a instructional or a focused academic time. Okay, pre-academy, they will maintain with their success period and exploratory. So success for our pre-academy is that required time for academic supports, peer-to-peer mentoring. We are looking at our exploratory, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that and show you some of the things that we have planned for that, or that we are wanting to explore. So then it would also better align here with the transition for D26. So it give our cadets access to the afternoon session and to the morning session without any type of true conflict. Obviously, our calendars don't always align because of the breaks and everything, but academically, our day-to-day schedule would better align. All right, so if you take a look, so I know that there are probably going to be some questions, as we go through. And so the way that the academic quarters would work, so for academic quarters, you would take a look at 5 academic courses with 1 academic skill focus period, 65 minutes long. So at 65 minutes long for our 9 weeks, 5 days a week, we are right at almost 3,000 minutes, so just over 2,900 minutes of instructional time per 9 weeks. If you compare to what we currently have with, so 18 weeks in a semester, 2 days a week of 90 minutes, with Mondays being our skill time and our remediation time, you are right at 3,300 minutes of instructional time for the semester. So are we losing some instructional time? Yes, we are losing right around just over 300 minutes of instructional time. But with that being said, with the focus academic time that we have in the middle of the day, that would be every day. So that is an additional 3,000 minutes of focused instructional time. So what does that focused instructional time look like? That looks like, so we would have math labs, we would have ELA labs, we would have ELL labs. So those would be for English as second language students. We would also look at SAT prep, courses. We would also look at courses designed for AP test prep. So we will have AP courses that are planning to expand as far as our course offerings over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. That would then allow us to have specific test prep time during that focused academic time. It would also give the opportunity for service minutes for our special education department. It would give the opportunity for occupational therapy. It would give the opportunity for our lunch and learns, our career exploration programs, etc. So that academic time is truly something that that would be our focus as far as developing that this summer and continue to put that forward. Pre-academy, very similar. One of the things that's unique about the pre-academy is as our numbers in the incoming 6th and current incoming 7th, those numbers are relatively low. But that presents us the opportunity to put 6th and 7th grade together for elective periods, specifically band and art. Band and choir. So what we would have is we would have a beginning band and a beginning choir that would be available for incoming 6th and new 7th graders that have not had interaction with those programs yet. Okay, so then we would, so with that, having all 6th and 7th graders in an elective now provides us the opportunity to have grade level collaboration. That grade level collaboration now allows us to continue our focus. So Christine Trotter and Ms. Asia, they have worked all year working on scope and sequence, getting everything aligned to current academic standards, preparing for iLearn, taking out all of the standards from Some of the other tests that we've had, NWEA, IXL data, breaking that data down and driving their instruction. So that would allow us to do it across all curriculums in the 6th and 7th grade. Okay, so that is, and then what we are also looking at is the addition of the junior achievement curriculum. So we are looking at entrepreneurship, financial literacy, some of the other things that program has to offer. So that would be a part of that. Would also go in with our Stephen Covey, Leader in Me, our 12 healthy habits, right? Our 7 healthy habits.
So does that mean they would get 6 credits a quarter, so they could get 12 credits a year?
No. So.
Or they get
I'll show you
five
real quick.
5 credits? That's where I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, so.
it looked like it's more than 40 credits that they need.
Yes, so no. So each quarter, you would have, so there's one class that they are going to be required to take every quarter.
Mhm.
That's CAP.
Okay,
Okay, CAP is going to be provided every quarter. So then you have 4 additional slots to be able to put students in. So they have the opportunity to earn, so we are looking at earning 17 credits for the full academic calendar year.
okay, that's where I was trying to.
So they're getting a credit a quarter?
Yeah, for these, for those who feel familiar with like Ivy Tech, where they have like the 8-week courses and the 16-week
Oh,
courses,
yes.
it's that similar part.
Right.
If we would be looking at CAP, right, so right now, technically there would be 20 opportunities for classes. And then CAP takes 4 of those because of kind of how that requirement goes. I will say, just so that for wrapping our heads around it, we're not asking you to vote on this
Yeah,
tonight.
no.
We have some meetings to have with families,
Right.
kids,
Yeah.
staff, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
So this, that's what I'll say. This is a presentation for consideration.
This is first.
Then we will be sending information out to families. My hope is to be able to send information out to families on Thursday with the hope of having a couple town halls starting next week to start getting feedback. I presented this to our teachers yesterday to make sure that they were aware of what I was presenting to you all so that they can start providing feedback. We started to get some really good questions coming in from staff, just in regards to the way that the schedule will work and the way that the model will work. So, just kind of continuing through just a little bit of it. So things that we would be working on administratively, and our goal as we move forward is that making sure that our professional development is academically focused. So we would be looking at the establishment of what we identify as best practices. So returning to what do we need to do to be able to measure proficiency. Pre-test, post-test is a very common practice. So we would be in the process of helping our teachers develop what those pre-test and post-tests would look like. We would help them begin guiding them with the creation of their scope and sequence, so then that we could truly look at the standards and create those SMART goals. Then we would start the process as well of making sure that we have clear and measurable learning objectives across all content. I mean, we have them well laid out in English and math. I will tell you that those are very well laid out, but then we need to do the same across all content. So, I mean, we're looking at science, social studies, as we continue to add electives, as we're going to be required to do, we're going to have to not just examine those core courses anymore. We're going to have to start examining all of them in the learning objectives of all those. So the intentional professional learning communities and collaborative spaces, that means that we are just trying to identify the way that those would best work. So as we put together with the 6th and 7th grade team, as I showed you on the schedule, what does that space actually look like? How do we navigate that space in making sure that we are providing them the support that they need? Is that once a week? Is that twice a week? Is that teacher-led? Is that who are our teacher leaders with that? What does our instructional team look like as we push those things forward? As far as cadet supports, one of the things that we've identified with this model is that it would reduce course load. I mean, it would really decrease the amount of organization that is required, but will also allow for some personalized focus into the content, and they're going to be able to dive a little bit deeper. consistent contact with content, and then feel like it will provide more support for discipline and social concerns as we become more aware. Okay, so with that, just an example of culminating activities, I shared this with staff yesterday. For instance, CAP, we wanted to use that. So if you have the 4 quarters of CAP, physical conditioning tests. So what is that going to look like? How are we going to measure? How are they going to maintain? Then we look at a 30-step drill sequence. I would love to be able to tell you at the end of our 2nd quarter that all of our upperclassmen are going to be able to learn the 30-step drill sequence throughout the 9 weeks. And at the end of the 9 weeks, then they were going to need to present that not just to their CAP leadership, but that would be something presented to the school administration, school leadership. So they would, then that puts an emphasis on the rank system that is in place in CAP. And it's starting to truly make what is taking place in the classroom important. Core subjects, so we're looking at all core subjects. I mean, now we are looking at capstone projects, portfolios, we're looking at papers, exams, simulations, demonstrations, etc. So very broad, but it is going to be something that we are going to have to be able to illustrate proficiency towards a standard. Establishing partnerships, I want to make everybody aware that these are emerging. At least the one to the left is emerging. This is KLR medical certification. It is an online program. They offer 2 years. So if you are a junior, the professional certifications, they are 2-year programs. They take place over the course of 16 weeks. So you have 16-week terms. So they would have access to that. Best part is that 2nd year, KLR is the one that has set up the relationships to get our cadets into externships. They have the responsibility to track, monitor, and grade our students' participation. For the pharmacy tech, pharmacy careers, they already have established relationships with CVS and Walgreens. Dental careers, they have local dental offices and orthodontic offices to be able to provide support. Things that they are currently building out is the veterinary science. As they make their way into Madison County, they are trying to identify some, veterinary offices that would be able to provide.
So that's gonna get them like a certification
Yes.
plus employment.
Yes.
So it kind of gets
yes.
them both.
Yes.
That's
So
cool.
the cost, so that is one thing that we are trying to work through right now. They sent us an MOU over. It has the cost and everything outlined. We're trying to identify how it works with our CTE funding. We have been in contact with the CSA about that type of funding to make sure that we can get these programs paid for. For instance, dental careers, the cost of the program for the first year is right around $2,500, but that includes the cost of all materials for the course and test prep. And as I said, it's asynchronous, so they have to log in at 1 o'clock because the attendance is taken, and they sit there with an instructor. The second year cost goes up. Probably right around $3,000 to $4,000 for that second year, but that includes 3 uniforms. So they're scrub tops, scrub bottoms, 3 sets. Then it also includes the cost of their certification exam, and it will also pay for their licensing fees. So very robust program, very unique program, and KLR is a program that continues to grow. 9th and 10th grade, as you can see there, they begin the introduction of 3 programs there. So Principles of Healthcare, Anatomy and Physiology, and Principles of Business. Principles of Business is a new one that introduces financial literacy, accounting, and marketing. Okay, so then it grows into the business management capstone. All right, B26, we already have that relationship there. Those are all the programs that are there, so I'm not going to go real in depth there. But again, with the emerging relationship and partnerships, we have JE Job Spark, which is currently in place. That's with our 8th grade. Every year they go down to the fairgrounds, participate in that. BizTown, it is a program that's taking place this year over at the elementary and is going to continue to grow. So BizTown is introduction to entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and it's a very unique program. So with that, things that we are looking to add, the bottom two here is there is a financial literacy component for 6th and 7th graders. That is a very robust and great program, and it can operate on either 6 to 8 week cycles. And they have different programs and different units that operate.
Honestly, can I interject on
Yes,
the
please
day?
do.
I mean, I'm already doing it, so might as
Right.
well, right? So one of the coolest things that has come out of some of these discussions, right? Obviously, this is an opportunity to rethink high school completely, right? Which is really cool, but CJ and I know he's gonna hit on one of those community partners, Energy Impact Center invited me and our, leadership to come up and just meet with the JA people. And what we discovered there is JA is way more than we even knew at this point. And there are K-12 curriculum. Most of it is free of cost to schools, BizTown, JA JobSparks, those have some costs, but we've already been doing those for a few years at least. One of the coolest things happened yesterday is we had a JA day at the elementary. They brought, I believe it was 35 people from First Merchants Bank to come in and work with our upper elementary kiddos on, financial literacy, some of that programming. And I mean, they have programs that go all the way down to the littles to just kindergarten. And it's going to be incredible for the career development as well as that financial piece, and free of charge. We love that price tag.
Right.
Love that.
Right.
So.
And then the last thing that was on there is they are going to be a huge partner with us. So every other year, so every 2 years, a school is required to host a college and career fair, right? So we had one last year. We have not had one this year, but JA will support and begin providing all of their business contacts and community partners. They will bring them in to our gymnasium and set up a career fair for us.
Awesome.
So that is expected. Our hope is to be able to have that next fall. So JA is going to help support that. So Youth on Campus, the Leadership Academy in Madison County, that is continuing. That will continue into next year.
And that's juniors and seniors?
No, so the Youth on Campus is for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, where we identify typically 6th and 7th graders, and we will partner with some upperclassmen, and they go to AU's campus and they get introduced to some of the academic programs that they have up there, and what life on campus would be like. So it's kind of it's an early introduction to a college campus. So,
Yeah, and we also have the YLA.
yes,
And,
The YLA.
YLA and balance for juniors and seniors. That's,
Yes.
Oh,
and then we
yes.
also have our 8th grade,
yes,
whatever,
what,
junior YLA.
yeah, junior YLA.
There we go.
Right, thank you.
A lot of terms to remember right now, guys.
So, I just want to provide a quick sample. As I said, I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but this is just a quick example of what a 6th and 7th grade scheduling matrix would look like. So don't pay attention to like the periods, like, as I told my staff, but this is truly, if you look at 6th and 7th grade math and ELA, so we are looking at over just about 12,000 minutes of instructional time on these high need areas, okay? Science and social studies, we would go every other, so bi-quarterly with those. For 6th grade, for instance, you would have your traditional social studies, and then the second quarter is when we would meet the civics requirement that we have to have for 6th graders. So electives, so we fit it where we could have a year-long elective. So if they choose to take band, they can take band for the entire year. Same thing with choir, art, etc. So that way that we are getting that immersion, about 12,000 minutes of immersion into a fine art as well. So so similar with 8th grade. So 8th grade scheduling matrix. I also have one put together for honor students, but not prepared. I was not prepared to show that one to you all or to our staff because there's just some things in the weeds in regards to the credit requirements. There are certain academic credits that can now be earned as 8th graders for future classes. They've extended the library that can be high school credits that can be earned in middle school. But 2 of them that I would love to be able to offer next year is preparing for college and careers. I think that is an 8th grade level class that is being taught at a lot of local schools. So it is just something that we will be able to put in place. Obviously, the 8th grade schedule looks a little bit different than the 6th and 7th grade, but we are modeling this like the academy schedule, as we said, because they are going to have the opportunity to take academy level classes. So just needing to be able to model it that way.
I have a question,
yeah.
CJ. Let's say miraculously our middle school is full next year. That means we have 240 students
Right.
going into CAP 5th period.
No.
No?
No, so that's why I said, don't pay attention to
That
what.
Oh, I didn't hear that
That
part.
was a single kid's.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah, that's,
I thought we
yeah,
don't
no,
have to
yeah,
teach
so that's
We
not
don't,
the
no.
master schedule, no.
Yeah,
That's why I
that's
said,
a
don't-
single human.
Yeah, so
Still
don't.
thinking it's breakfast
Yeah,
level.
we don't have to, don't pay attention to that.
I think it's one of those things, we're gonna divide and conquer, and that's
Yeah.
the time where admin's just gonna be out of the building for whatever.
Right.
Oh, no, you're not leaving me with that.
Right, so then, as I said, the 9th grade really is not impacted as much because they have the requirements of the typical courses. So this is just kind of an outline of the courses of what, so the blue courses are required courses per the state. The ones that are highlighted in green, just so everybody's aware that those are the current courses that are our local requirements. So if taking world history, I mean, we have not addressed, I think I just want to say this out loud, we have not addressed the academic requirements in our charter to mirror what is required by the state as of right now. Those have not been adjusted. That is going to happen through the renewal process.
So actually, like block 5, they would still get a credit for that class, so they could get 20 classes a year, or 20 credits a year?
No. So that would still be the remedial time. So that would be
Oh, remedial time.
Yeah, so that would be the
Okay.
academic focus. Yeah, I mean, just because I should have taken this.
No,
shifted it
see, she's talking about the block 5.
Yeah,
Block
right,
5.
Yeah.
Wouldn't block 5
Yeah.
be
Right,
a
yes,
credit
you're
also?
correct. Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, it'll be another class,
So they could get 20 credits a year,
theoretically, yeah.
theoretically, if you're taking a class in every
Well,
block, right?
yeah. well,
That
except-
includes
except
like
for
their
that, yeah,
electives, unless they take a lab or prep
Yeah.
CC, but the prep CCs would be a class,
Right.
but the labs would not.
100%, right,
Okay,
Right.
okay.
for year one,
Sorry.
for year one.
Is that
So-
gonna affect the athletic? Don't they have to have 6 classes, or is that for the year?
No,
It's a percentage.
it's a percentage of
Okay.
what they are scheduled into.
Okay.
So because we have an 8-period day right now, they have to be scheduled into 6 out of 8 of those classes, so 75% of the classes.
So it would still be whatever, 75%
Yeah,
of,
70%, whatever the number is.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yep. So just wanted to let everybody know, as I said, and as I informed staff, this is not going to be a miracle that we're going to be able to just throw out and work it all out year one. So a 2-year project. So in regards to, want to present it here tonight with the hopes of getting feedback over the course of the next 3 weeks to be able to return it to the table here for consideration in May. If that were to take place, then the summer of 2025, we would look to identify ways to be able to continue our ELA and math scope and sequence, developing some of the personalized pathways and identifying how we are working towards obtaining the seals. And then we would look at our career exploration curriculum. So this is more specifically Prep CC. And then we would be looking at JA, junior achievement curriculum, and how we're going to implement those. So pre-academy with our exploratory periods, et cetera. Then summer 2025, we've also had the conversation about working in our observation and evaluation rubrics from an administrative standpoint. And then we would be finalizing the master schedule, at some point, hopefully mid-June, be able to get all of that taken care of. Fall 2025, so in the fall, that would be our focused professional development, grade level team development, and then in the spring of 2026 is whenever we'd be able to roll out some of the more career-focused aspects of it. So we're looking at our co-op experiences, apprenticeship programs, service-based learning opportunities, and then our work-based learning opportunities as well. So
And that would be for the following.
for the fall, so
For
for
the
the
following
26th,
year.
yeah, for the 20,
Yeah, we're
so
not
we
gonna
would
just-
introduce
I'm
it
sorry.
to staff. we would introduce, we would make the board aware of where we are at with that, with the idea of implementing that in the 26-27 school year. So.
Have you talked with like other schools in like Madison County or anything? I'm just curious
Yes.
to know kind of like how they're doing this whole community partnerships and all that kind of stuff too.
So we truly are the only ones that are working this way with the partnership. So like with KLR, et cetera, a lot of schools like ACS, Newcastle, Muncie, they're going to lean very heavily on the programs that they already have in place. So they're going to lean very heavily on their career centers. They're going to lean very
like
heavily.
Elwood's got like
Yeah.
Hines
Yes.
and that, so
Yes.
they're gonna be looking at more of their like
Yes.
D26 type
Yes.
buildings
Yes.
rather than other
Yes.
Yeah,
opportunities.
they're focusing more a lot on what they call the work-based learning type.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, and this is one of those things where we've done some brain dumps and, CJ, I know he said he talked like to teachers, hey, by the way, I'm having a board meeting tomorrow, and surprise. But there have been some teachers part of this planning project, right? And this has been something we've been talking about for at least 2 years, especially with the work base, not necessarily how this block, because they've opened the doors for a lot of creativity. And that's where we get to quote the pandemic pivot really fast because we're a speedboat on that. But there are other schools. See if you want to tell them about like when you went to IASP's meetings and things about.
Yeah, so we went down, this would have been at the end of January if they had accepted the rule, accepted it in law. We were at Noblesville. They had 18 different schools in their plans, and they were all different. So, and I'm talking about schools the size of APA, Madison Grant. I mean, us and Madison Grant have two completely different thought processes on it. And the reason for that is our location. So we are connected to a city. More rural, smaller schools are going to have a different thought process as far as how they're going to identify ways to meet these needs. Then you have schools like Batesville and HSE that are presenting their plans, which they're so far out of the water of where our view is because of what they are connected to. You can't.
I was just curious.
No,
I didn't mean to.
No. I'm just telling you that there is not. This is why it's exciting for me. Is because there is not a set model. Like it is let's throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I mean, it truly is. I mean, it has the chance to be really sloppy and fun, type of thing. I mean, it's, I don't know, it's just creative and unique.
The fact that, with us as a school, even from our founding, right, we believe in the individualized learning model where we know one size doesn't fit all. And the education model, that came out of the Industrial Revolution of preparing kids for the factory and then turning them out like we were our own factory, it doesn't work. And, looking at our board, composition right here, right? Angie, obviously workplace development, really your jam. Obviously, we've got that guy over there and George looking at that enlistment part, but also having that higher ed part, and then, like Ryan with that. And then, we have the medical field. We have this. That gives us more insight and leverage, even looking at the resources at this table. Already, the people that are coming to the table with us that we've been working on for years, this is incredible because kids are going to find a path. Now, when they first rolled out the pathway, it was like, okay, well, you're still manufacturing kids into this. And, well, you got to hit box 3 and you got your ASVAB score of 31. Well, I guess you're going to have to fill out an intent to enlist and you're going to have to try to live that way. It gives us the ability to flex with the kids and adapt with them while also hitting, the workforce, the governor's workforce cabinets, soft skill development and getting to be more proficiency based. As a student for myself in high school, as academic honors diploma and did all those things, I knew when I was 7, I was going to be a high school English teacher. I know that most 7-year-olds are probably not in that boat, but I was. And I did not waver from that one bit. I spent my entire middle school and high school career trying to take as many English classes, creative writing, etc. as I could. And God bless all mathematicians. What was the point of me taking AP calculus? I did, but it wasn't helping me for that whole English track. Now, obviously, AP calculus, sorry, mathematicians, I do agree on this, did prepare me with critical thinking. It did hit my, high ability standards and all those things. But how much more could have happened with me, even in my own development and career, had I had better access to that? Had I gotten to go do a journalism internship, I could have gone, to the ND Star or something of that nature. Well, now that all of this exists, it's opening the doors of the workforce. Also looking, although we don't fully agree with this, and with the way they have changed child labor laws, students can have a full-time job and go to high school. If that full-time job's paying their bills, why can't it also satisfy some of their graduation requirements? Especially because we know if they can get that apprenticeship, they can get in early, they're gonna be very successful in that field. But we can't manufacture that, 40 kids, 50 kids a senior year, right? Oh, here you go. So it's exciting, it's terrifying. Looking at it from a documentation standpoint, since the state's not giving us a lot of bumpers there to figure it out. I like this because then we can create our own and say, hey, well, we created our own, you didn't give us this, and we'll fight you later on it. But do know that it's gonna be a little bit radical, which, you know what, fine, that'll be fun. Good presentation, CJ.
I appreciate your presentation. I'll tell you, as a grandmother of a current 8th grader, and I had already read up that they were changing all that, I keep up with the news and all that, and I was like, he's in 8th grade. He has no clue what he wants to be when he grows up, and he's got to pick this path, and how can an 8th grader do that, He's still figuring out life, and
hopefully this will open us up because of the way it adds some extra quarters, right? We can use some more exploratory, and that's part of why we moved to those exploratory classes a few years ago to get that in there. But honestly, I know you're talking about, our little 8th grade buddy, but we're gonna have to be having these conversations starting with kindergartners.
Yeah.
And like in 4th and 5th grade, right?
Yes.
Starting to
And that was one of the,
specialize a little bit.
one of the
You're gonna
schools
have
that
a
we
6th grader, so.
actually throughout, one of the schools we visited throughout, they have, career learning starting in pre-K. So they are using the RIASEC standards. It's, so the RIASEC standards, I mean, they have it all mapped out of how they are going to introduce, so for kindergartners, they bring an EMT in, with the ambulance and let them tour the ambulance, and
Oh, wow.
just, that's how they introduce it. I mean, so they do one thing a month, and that's
Right.
CJ, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Ryan.
I have 2 quick questions, and also maybe for Jill too. Does this give some leeway also, maybe if a student doesn't successfully pass a course, for them to go back and be able to complete that? Okay.
Yeah, a lot, yeah.
All right.
It would give a lot of leeway to that.
Give some room, and that way we're not totally panicked on the credit recovery
Right.
and because, let's look at some of our seniors. We probably right now have seniors that could
Son
be
is
taking
calling.
12 or 13 classes because they're trying to make it to this stage.
Gotcha.
And that's a lot of independent studies to be doing on top of really hard curriculum as it is.
My only question, I'm sure it's still early, talks about the new graduation requirements. There was conversation I know in Indianapolis where Purdue and an IU were having some challenges because now they have to change their acceptance with some of these new curriculums. Have you guys, I'm sure you've probably been hearing about that, or how does that affect with some of the students in high school trying to get enrolled into those
Well,
colleges?
so that is one benefit. So they have to meet, in order to get the direct admit, they have to meet the academic or the enrollment honors plus
Okay.
to be accepted
Okay.
automatically too. And the governor signed into law, that would have been last Tuesday.
Yeah.
The direct admit program for any school that's receiving state funds So IU, Ball State, Purdue, all of those schools you have to be a direct admit if you are that academic.
Okay.
I guess the honors seal plus or the
Honors seal
enrollment
plus.
seal plus, but.
And what we will do as a school, right, if we have kids, because we have adapted, right, obviously APA was founded specifically as a college preparatory academy. But when that happened 17 years ago, it was still everybody goes to college, college or die if you're looking at schools in Indy. And we know we've had to change that. And so we want every student to be college ready for whatever post-secondary path they choose. And so as we're designing this, as we're looking at that, making sure that they're going to have what they need, because one of my fears had been previously is, okay, let's say a kid says they're gonna go the enlistment path, right? And then all of a sudden, they're processing and find out that there's a heart murmur. If they spent their whole high school career, and I know that they're fairly aligned anyways for the enrollment part, if they spent their whole high school career, I'm going military, and now they might not meet a requirement to get to go to college, that's going to be a problem. So making sure that we build in a safeguard for those kids, because we know there's going to be some changes. And I think that's where Ivy Tech comes in too, with knocking some things off in the summer and all that.
And AU, so AU does have a direct admit program as well. So any student that graduates here in Madison County is automatic admit into AU. So they started that last spring. So we have, I think right now I have 4 that are planning on attending AU in the current senior class with the direct admit program. So, and that's a big thing with the governors. So that's where, say the private schools, Franklin, DePaul, AU, Earlham, all of them, they are trying to identify a way to now compete with the direct admit. So it's becoming more competitive that way.
Go ahead, George.
So mine a little bit piggybacks on what Jill stated earlier on child labor laws and a little bit what you said, Ryan, about, the teacher in me is very disappointed in what they did just because, basically the kids couldn't meet the standard, so we decided to lower the standard and we made it easier for them to graduate. However, we can't change what's been done. With that said, so mine's more of a statement than a question because this is more of you're briefing us on what's in the works for Joe and Mr. Miller. Every year we've seen since COVID that the e-learning has increased between sophomores and juniors every year. We have approximately 40% of our juniors and sophomores going to e-learning because they can work more. I'm seeing this across ACS, I'm seeing across here. These kids are getting their own apartments at 17, 18, making their own money. How is there, I guess, a statement? Can you please consider, is there a way that we can prevent them from going to e-learning unless it's a family hardship or something? I don't know.
Hey, that's so funny. So we just had a large meeting yesterday about evaluating the online program and the enrollment requirements and the enrollment maintenance requirements. So as we were talking to Ball State, the online program, we don't have to offer it, right? We don't have to allow all students to enroll in that. That's kind of been the response to COVID, right? Where we did, because that's what we had to do, but we can put parameters on that because one of the challenges that we face with that is, so we just went through, I believe it was 6 expulsions due to non-attendance. So if you're looking at why are our numbers, enrollment numbers different from last month to this month, it's literally because of non-attendance, and we're not gonna keep kids enrolled when they are, not participating, they're not there. We've sent lots of kids to the prosecutor's office because of that attendance part. But we know that that online environment is not best for every kid. And there will be obviously some medical parts. There will be mental health parts. There are some kids that they are gonna thrive in that environment. And also where now, if we, move forward with the KLR partnership, we're gonna be able to make that a better part. But right now it's kind of been like a catch-all, or, well, hey, I don't feel good, or I don't feel like going to school anymore. I'm just gonna enroll, we've not had enough bite on that. And so that actually, we had a full secondary meeting yesterday to talk about that. Zach Morrison has been working on our attendance agreements, our program admittance part, because it's similar in the eyes of Police of Fall State to our high ability program or our special ed program or something of that nature. If we know it's not the best fit for everybody, then it's not the best fit. Now, because of the meeting that we're having today, we do know that there will be other online programs or schools that will sure come on and enroll, right? And so that's going to be something that we have to prepare to weather on that as well. But being able to make basically like we would a case conference decision for an IEP kiddo, similar thing, right? If you're enrolling, here is this agreement, here are the standards, here are the parents' responsibilities. And if you're not going to meet these requirements, then we will remove that and you either have to re-enroll in person or you are going to have to find another service. But yeah, great. I feel like we planted you, sir. Did not.
Well, CJ really reminded me of that. I mean, I even spoke to Angie, separately about this. Like, these numbers are going up. I asked ACS board members and talking about, you all know I'm involved in that community as well. Like, it's across the state.
Oh, yeah.
Across the country, and it's going up. And if we give the kids an opportunity to not show up, they're going to take it. It's like you give a kid to sleep in, he's going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And CJ said that they're allowed to miss 3 days before they don't qualify for that diploma. Well, this is going to knock, for right now, probably over 40% of our kids. I saw a kid in Pendleton, he wanted a mental health day, and he was doing e-learning. So,
yeah.
With that said, I'll go to my second one because I know we've been here long enough. The second one, CJ, I know right now the Department of Education, when kids serve the military, this only really affects the National Guard in particular, because they're the only ones that can join as a junior. They're allowed to miss right now up to 10 days without being affected. They signed, I believe it was last year, with our liaison, Dan Gilbert, the DOE, that the governor signed off on them missing 14 days, and it should not affect their diploma. Is that correct? Right. Okay. I just want to make sure that was still in place, the 14 days of missing.
Yeah.
Because that would put them on the service, the enlistment.
But they still qualify for the honors even though they miss. Okay.
Yeah, and I will say something, CJ, and I'm sure you're aware of this more so than I am, but George has a side to me about joining the National Guard. Those kiddos, let's look at Jasmine Runge, right? Went to basic all that. Well, she just hit that employment category as well because now she's
she qualifies for that work-based learning.
And
right now we are working on trying to get a different, not a different path, but separate from enlistment. That if they come to our drills or do stuff with the National Guard, they will still qualify for like an externship.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to see what it's like, but I don't want to do it because it's still the work-based learning diploma. But I'll talk to both of you offline about it.
that's really cool. That's actually really, really cool. Hey, great presentation.
Great job.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, CJ.
Thank
Great
you.
information.
She's saying, we'll see
Namaste.
tomorrow. Hey, it's okay, right?
Woosah.
That's,
Lisa, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
I was just wondering, who's gonna do all that scheduling? You?
the other
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, I feel sorry for them.
She and Darlisha are just chomping at the bit to
You're
knock
gonna
us
have to have a
out.
giant supercomputer to figure all that out.
Let's chat GPT.
Yeah, we did set up a wall with magnets, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next thing on the agenda here, we'll get going, continuing on, is the enrollment document requirements and the student long-term absence and family vacation policy updates.
Well, hello, everyone. You get to hear presentations from me again. All right, so these will be very quick, well, dependent upon your active participation. So looking at the first policy that is listed, enrollment documentation requirements. So as state requirements have changed, as the challenges that come with, especially the population we serve, sometimes getting those birth certificates, obviously it has been a continuous audit finding. There are other options that we can use to confirm birth dates, as well as residency. I have done a lot of research with what is allowable within the state statute. as well as practice of other schools across the state on the different documentation that they allow. And so if you look at that policy as it is listed, you'll see at the very top of it, our current part, and then you'll see the list of potential possibilities, if I can find it in here. Hey, thank you. Excellent. Oh, I forgot, I'm not on Zoom anymore, so I can actually use my computer again. So looking at that, basically what our enrollment packet will say, the completed APA enrollment packet, obviously that is very important for us. The guardian/foster parent documentation if it's applicable, and then the proof of birth date. They can either provide that birth certificate or they can provide a valid piece of identification from that list below. That includes the medical record or by a signed letter from a licensed medical provider that has the date of birth listed. Same thing with state agency. That would include FSSA, or so if their family is getting food stamps or Medicaid or HIP, it will have listed the child's name and birth date on that document. That also includes DCS, anything of that nature. If we get transfer documentations from the other school that would contain their immunization record through CHIRP, that is another verified data point. Obviously, the caveat that I put on that is if we receive it from another educational institution, because that means that it has been verified or their identity has been verified within the DOE's STN center. They also have baptismal certificates and notarized copies of that, notarized affidavit from a parent or guardian indicating the date of birth. That one is out there. That will, obviously, that opens you up for a little bit of nuance there. And so when we put this on our actual enrollment documents, we will say that we reserve the right to request additional documentation. So if something feels a little off in that case, that allows us to meet clearinghouse requirements. So if we have suspicion of trafficking or temporarily relocating children without true guardianship, missing children or misguardian children, that will give us protections there to meet those. Valid passport, the prior school record coming directly from that school, not the, hey, I brought my record with you. And then valid Indiana ID, and then the previous school records from an accredited educational institution or school. That would allow that out of state part, but we would have to get that again directly from that school. And then proof of residency, this has been a challenge in the past, but if a family member has the valid Indiana ID, driver's license, typical utility bills, a lease agreement, a mortgage statement, bank statement, or credit card statements, that's what that other financial institution billing typically is, property tax, or home or renter's insurance. Anything that's truly going to show that there is an established Indiana residence. That gives us, we don't have to have all of these items, just one from that list, and that helps add some flexibility on there. I will say, we don't have the Social Security card on there, or any of those type of documentations listed, but we do not need to require that Social Security. So.
Now, is this a response to what the auditor brings up every year about, the kids that aren't documented properly?
Yeah, and it's part of a response to that, but it's also a response to the challenges that some of our families are facing. Just getting that. So I know I've shared with the board, it took me 18 months to get my son's birth certificate and a Social Security card and an ID, because you needed one of those documents to get the other two.
Oh, yeah.
And my son was part of DCS, and DCS couldn't even help me. Right, because my son was not born in the state of Indiana. And so when he joined our family, DCS was supposed to be helping get all that together, 18 months. And, you know, that was extremely limiting for him, for his adult independence, for him, you know, developing some of those skills, because none of those, no job, etc. And so this will allow us to meet the state requirements of allowing enrollment, because if they don't have these documents, we are still supposed to allow enrollment. And then we have to start hunting down the documentation, and that's a lot for anybody. And you know, with the auditors, they've said, oh, if you can show us that you've sent 3 emails or that, right, that's great. But because of the increase that just across the world, and kids being misplaced or trafficking or those things, this also gives us an opportunity to make sure that we are covered in those areas as well.
Now, one thing it looks like you're proposing is basically, it's optional now to have the immunization. Before, it was an either or. You either had your current record or a completed objector form.
We still have to have that part.
Oh,
This is just for the identification, really truly
okay.
there. So as far as CHIRP goes and the objection form, we still have to have those, so that'll stay. Not actually sure why that didn't stay under the box. Yes, so do need approval on that. And then
Well,
we will start with our new kindergartners that are joining us on Thursday.
I will be glad to make a motion that we approve as submitted to us the proposed changes to enrollment packet documentation requirements presented to us as of April the 8th, 2025.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That is approved. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Thank you, you probably made my job a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Ah,
All right, we do appreciate that, and maybe we won't have those continuing pesky little audit items.
yeah, we gotta give them something to find.
That is true.
Well, they can find it on somebody else's job, not
There
mine.
you go. There you
That
go.
is true.
But
It's
it's
mostly
always
your
the end. She's like,
department, yeah.
It's like, it's not Angie, Andy's a rock star, but it's fine. So the next part is our cadet extended absence policy. With this, if you go through and review it, we have had, with some of the population that we serve, where we will have families go back to Mexico for over Christmas break, but then stay a couple extra weeks. And what we have to be very cautious about is how long a student is absent and how long that they are staying enrolled at APA. And so going through this policy, it just makes sure that that is outlined. It also makes sure that families know the expectation for taking that extended leave. We do have, and I want to make sure that I reemphasize this, we do have students from all different categories of our population that do go. You know, I got a parent notification this afternoon that, hey, my kid's going to be gone for the next 5 days. We're going to go to Florida. Well, we're in school. Thank you for the less than 24-hour notice that your child is not going to be here.
Wasn't spring break just?
Yeah, we
Couple
did
weeks
just have
ago.
one, but you know, it's warmer now in Florida, I guess. And you know, some families, they have reasons to go, right? Where, you know, once in a lifetime trip and
Or
those
work
type of
trip or
things.
something, yeah.
Right, and the state does allow for family vacations. It does allow for, you know, religious pilgrimages and things of that nature. But we do have some families that may have been extending these a little further than they should, or while they are gone, they do not communicate with us, and we don't know if they're coming back, they're not coming back. And, you know, we do have open enrollment, and so for us, when we are audited, if we have a student, let's say we claim them, they left in December, they left right in early January, and it's count day, and we've not seen them, and we claim them, they pull attendance records, and if it's showing that this kid has been absent for 20 days, it appears fraudulent on behalf of the
Didn't
school.
we have a problem with that on one of the recent count days?
We have not, no.
Oh, okay, I was thinking.
Well, you're right, we did have a family that was approaching that, because they had not returned from vacation, and we were actually getting ready to have to withdraw them. Now, they did return, prior to the count day, they were back in attendance. While they were on vacation, they did, have a robbery happen and lose pretty much all their means to get back. And so that was a little bit of a challenge.
That's a little different.
That's a little different,
Yeah.
but we
Still.
didn't know,
Yeah.
right? And we never want to open ourselves up for fraudulent enrollment charges or accusations, because that's really just not what we do, right? Like, we're above board on all of that.
Right.
And so this policy just makes sure that families understand they may lose their, if they take those extra extended part, they may lose their spot, because we can't really hold it.
Isn't that almost a hollow threat in that we're nowhere near our allocated
It's not hollow.
capacity?
Because we are at capacity in certain grade levels.
Oh, okay.
So just if we have,
As long as we maintain the desired small class size.
right,
Yeah.
we at certain grade levels, you know, they get maxed out fairly quickly, it'll ebb and flow. But if they, let's say they had a kindergartner, we had 60, those were the spots that we allotted that year. They leave, a new one enrolls, and then they come back a month later, we can't guarantee that spot to them. So, Angie, did you?
What happens over count day then? If they take a vacation over count day and we have to unenroll them, do we not get to count them that second quarter or that second
No, we
semester?
wouldn't get to. If they are taking that extended, like that beyond the 10-day part, no, we wouldn't get to count them. Because if we did count them and then they never return, right? When they go to do the audit, they're going to see that there is no attendance history, and we lose that. So it'd be highly encouraged with families that we're not going on vacation on that time period. It'd be really great if they would be able to go during our actual breaks as a school. But we do know that culturally and in some circumstances, especially for where I use like the case of the religious pilgrimage or things, there are things that we need to learn or be able to work with and navigate. But at the end of the day, we do have to make sure that we are meeting all of our legal requirements as well.
And I'll say, just so the boards can relate, demographically, it's Latinos and it's higher in males, because the males become able to work. Whether it works the fields, they can take care of their siblings. It's an issue at ACS. Again, it's an issue statewide, especially with the migrants and our political setting right now. And I'll say it, as I won't put you in a bad position.
Thank you.
But it's really bad between the grades of 7th and 8th, and then they see it again at 10 and 11. For some reason, that's that age gap. People are trying to figure out why, but that's the real reason. Is they become at an age where they can take care of their siblings, and then they become at an age where they can start working.
Yeah, and we've seen some of that, and that is, I mean, that's kind of where some of this is, right? And I do appreciate you throwing that out there, George. And that is something, our policy, we consulted with Anderson Elementary specifically to see, so that we were kind of aligned with where they are, and looking at Anderson Community Schools too, because a lot of times when we're going to put a policy like this out, I want to make sure that at least citywide, right, we're on the same page, because we do have so many kids go back and forth between the schools, and it could be very confusing. Well, here I can do this, here I can do that, right? Like as we're talking about the online program. Well, at APA, I can hop on anytime I want, which is not fully the case. And then if I go to, Joe's school over there, I might not be able to. And so working through that, but yes, this one is more consistent with that. Like I said, it keeps us out of those legal crosshairs. It's making sure that our enrollment practices are truly aligned with state statute, And that, you know, because we do go through such an extensive audit every year, we have to be in compliance. So that's that.
It doesn't violate Title VI.
No, sir, it most
Okay.
certainly does not.
That's
And
our upcoming.
this would be the same for, online cadets as well.
Mhm.
They show that they're not in attendance online.
Yes.
So is that a thing that if they do an extended and they jump onto online because of the extended,
No.
they do that?
No, and that is, it's going to be one of those, and like I said, we had a large meeting about that yesterday, where if there are kids that are having attendance issues and it's because of the transportation, but they are going to do their academic work, then APA Online might work well for them. But if they're having attendance issues because they want to sleep all day and they don't want to go show up to school, do the work, whatever, they're not going to be successful hopping over to APA Online either.
Right.
And we're not doing anyone a good service by doing so and supporting that.
Yeah. Well, I will be happy to make a motion that we approve the cadet extended absence policy as submitted to us on April the 8th, 2025.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that as well, too.
No problem. And I will say, I did include in your board packets and my CEO 2 discussion points. Obviously, at this point, we probably shouldn't go any longer on that with the board meeting. But looking at what Dave referenced as Title VI, and also looking at the U.S. Department of Ed's response to the COVID extension, that obviously does not affect us because we spend every dime as fast as we get it. But it is impacting our neighbors to
It
save
could be
us.
setting a precedent for other programs as well.
Yeah, it could be. So I will send out some of my more robust discussion points about that. I'm also going to be sharing those documents with our staff because they need to know some of the things that are happening at our federal level as well as our state level, because we are all impacted by that, or the evidence that things can quickly change with the swipe of a pen.
Yep.
So,
Looks like something
As an
Barry
English-
Goldwater would approve of.
as an English major, there is absolute finite proof right there that the pen is mightier than the sword. So there is my silver lining.
All right, appreciate that. Any other further discussion? If not, can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting this evening?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
To executive session.
Yes, we'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session. So we already have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
That's for the evening though, right?
Do we need any restroom breaks or anything?
Yeah, we'll do it here in a second.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. We'll end the meeting tonight at 8:53 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for everyone who attended. Our next scheduled board meeting
Yeah, they are.
is Tuesday, May
No,
6,
please.
2025. And we'll motion to go into executive session. If we can come back within 5 minutes, we'll appreciate it.
5 minutes.